If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon, link is in the description.
Chapter 176, Steve. Chapter 175. As a cosmic elder. Actually, Tosen is quite appreciative. To be honest, Fang Mo doesn't know what exactly happened in the original story, where the entire void was destroyed. Normally, shouldn't everything be fine once the gemstone is handed over? But after all, the original story didn't indicate what exactly happened to the void. So, Fang Mo had no way of knowing. However, as of now, when Tosen saw the two infinity stones in Fang Mo's hand, he quickly chose to back down. Please, you must accept this gemstone. Tosen bowed respectfully, presenting the reality stone to Fang Mo with both hands. The infinity stones have the power to bewitch the mind. I was merely misled just now. Sir, please believe that I had no other intentions. Why didn't you do this from the beginning? Fang Mo looked at Tosen with a smile, and it must be said that the latter knew when to quit. For this reason, Fang Mo didn't make things difficult for him and directly took the reality stone into his hand. Just as Fang Mo touched the reality stone, a system notification sounded in his ears. System notification, reality stone studied, you have gained 15% new module download permission. System notification, reality element studied, you have gained 10% new module download permission. System notification, mastered the creation methods of artificial body and artificial mind, you have gained 1 new module download permission. System notification, more puppet modules begin downloading. Fang Mo said nothing, silently pinching the reality stone with 2 fingers, and placed it above the infinity gauntlet, allowing the gauntlet to automatically absorb it into a slot. A ding sound was heard. A red light instantly spread, almost covering the entire void. A mysterious feeling rose in Fang Mo's mind, the boundary between reality and illusion seemed especially blurred and fragile. At this moment, all thoughts in Fang Mo's mind magnified without limits. Science and laws were completely abolished at this moment. In front of this stone, it seemed as if everything lost its original meaning. Almost instinctively, Fang Mo clenched the gauntlet tightly. The red light gradually converged into several figures that he missed tremendously. Fang Mo looked at the scene before him with a somewhat complicated expression. He knew all of this was an illusion, but he still wanted to quietly watch them for a moment. After all, when he died, he didn't even take a single picture to remember them by. However, the compatibility between the reality stone and Fang Mo didn't seem good. Almost the next moment, the scene before him flickered unstably. Then it turned into pieces of red light and vanished completely. Seeing this, a trace of faint loss flashed in Fang Mo's eyes, but it disappeared in an instant, turning into a soft sigh. Then, he closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Phew! He opened his eyes again. Fang Mo had returned to normal. Are you all right? Nick Fury glanced at Fang Mo, he just said the stone would affect one's mind. Is that true? Don't tell me you can't tell, that was just his excuse. Fang Mo shook his head, only the Mind Stone among the Infinity Stones affects the mind. However, this gauntlet specifically counters it, using the power of the Infinity Stones to suppress each other, so there won't be a problem. Nick Fury's eyes twinkled. Known for his keen mind as the king of agents, he had, of course, realized something from what had just happened. However, he didn't ask about it directly but stored it in his mind, deliberately saying, as long as you're sure you're fine, that's good. After all, if you have a problem, we're all doomed. I don't want to see that happen. Cough cough. Seeing this, the cosmic collector Tosen also hastily coughed, probably afraid that Fang Mo would cause trouble for him. No one has ever had such power, to control 3 infinity stones at the same time. Didn't Odin do it before? Hearing Tosen say this, Fang Mo looked at him curiously. Well, Tosen hesitated for a moment, then shrugged and said, I've never seen the stones he collected, so it doesn't count. All right. Hearing this, Fang Mo smiled indifferently. The transaction is now complete. Tosen saw that Fang Mo didn't seem to want to leave and tentatively asked, do you want to? Tell me the truth, did you just have ideas about the reality stone? Fang Mo looked at Tosen and asked directly. Of course not. Upon hearing this, Tosen's heart skipped a beat, and he hurriedly explained, I, Tosen, always uphold integrity in business. Apart from what I rightfully deserve, I would never entertain any extraneous thoughts. Is that so? Fang Mo smiled and lifted the infinity gauntlet. See the gold stone on it. It has a lie detector function. Want to try? I'm not interested in the infinity stones, Tosen said directly. But I did overstep just now, and it's understandable that you're unhappy. What can I do to appease you? Simple, Fang Mo smiled, let me touch your collection. Hey! Hearing Fang Mo's words, Tosen seemed a bit stunned. You're interested in collecting too? More or less. Fang Mo couldn't say he wanted to unlock modules, so he just said, after all, you're a member of the Cosmic Elders. Anything you've selected must be interesting, so I intend to appreciate it. Oh! Tosen became enthusiastic. You indeed have exceptional taste as the controller of the Infinity Stones. My collection consists of the most precious artifacts in the universe, be it living beings, remains, or various odd items. Loki looked up at the two of them. He really wanted to go home, but both were praising each other, leaving no room for him to interject. So he reluctantly followed Fang Mo, watching him appreciate Tosen's collection. And it turned out, Tosen indeed had many great items. Fang Mo touched them under the guise of appreciating art, while Tosen seemed happy, thinking Fang Mo was genuinely admiring his collection and enthusiastically explained each item's origins. As Tosen introduced, Fang Mo touched happily. This is a very interesting race, Tosen pointed at a ferocious humanoid creature and said, their race lives on a harsh planet. To survive, they expand their tribe wildly when they can and cannibalize each other when conditions are harsh. Sounds quite barbaric, Nick Fury couldn't help but comment. It's their means of survival, Tosen didn't mind and continued, only the strongest survive and breed even stronger offspring to combat the harsh environment. At this point, a system notification suddenly sounded in Fang Mo's mind. System prompt, research on cannibalism behavior complete, you've gained access to download a new module. System prompt, cannibalism module download initiated. System prompt, cannibalism module download complete. Load now. Ah, this. After hearing the system prompt, Fang Mo was also stunned. This mod sounds scary. But actually, Fang Mo had played it before. This mod is actually quite lightweight, it only adds a tool called meat cutting knife to the game. This thing can hurt others and can also hurt yourself. If you attack a villager, a raw villager meat will drop. If you attack a zombie, a rotten meat will drop. If you attack a player, a meat named after that player will drop. Of course, you can also attack pigs, cows, and sheep. The effect is a loss of some health, and then a meat will drop. Chickens won't work, their HP is too low, and they would be killed instantly. This mod sounds terrifying. But back in the day, it was a godsend for combating Pam's harvest craft. Want to reduce my satiation, hey? Hat. Fine. Watch me eat myself. Fang Mo vaguely remembers that back when they were pioneering on the server, everyone would go all over the mountains and plains looking for the sacred spring, then soak in it while cutting their own meat to eat. After all, this item isn't affected by Pam's harvest craft and can restore a lot of satiation. Of course, what's even worse is that once someone is found to be AFK, everyone will rush over like flies smelling blood, push them into a hole, pour in the sacred spring, and start cutting their meat like crazy. In the end, the person's artisan armor would auto-upgrade. Fang Mo still remembers meeting a friend called ? This guy was willing to cut his own meat to feed eagles, feeding the whole server by himself, so much so that everyone burped a ? Flavor. Fang Mo was sleepless one night, turned on the game and saw the server was full of cannibalism. Well, this is hilarious. Thinking of this, Fang Mo made up his mind and chose to load the mod. System prompt, cannibalism mod loaded successfully. System prompt, you've downloaded and run a new mod, you have gained a lucky block that will randomly draw an item from any known mod. With the system prompt sound, another lucky block appeared in Steve's inventory. Sir, what's wrong? Seeing Fang Mo looking dazed, Tosen was also curious, are you interested in this collection? Oh, it's okay. Fang Mo waved his hand, I just find it interesting. Go on, continue. As you wish. Tosen nodded and quickly continued introducing his collections. However, what Fang Mo found disappointing was that despite introducing a lot of collections, he hadn't triggered any new mods. It seems that although there are many collections in this void land, there clearly isn't a mod heaven setup. Just as Fang Mo was thinking this, Tosen suddenly changed the subject and also began introducing his last few collections, these collections come from a planet full of fantastical elements. Look at this minotaur, I really like its axe, and this necromancer, I had to disassemble it until it was just a skull to keep it from moving. Oh, and this weird snowman knight. Accompanying Tavan's voice, a system prompt finally sounded in Fang Mo's mind. System prompt, concepts like Hydra, Lich, Minotaur, Snow Monster Leader, etc., researched. You've gained download permission for a new mod. System prompt, Twilight Forest mod begins downloading. Chapter 177, Steve Chapter 176. System notification, Twilight Forest mod is starting to download. Hearing this sound, Fang Mo instantly became restless. Honestly, he had been waiting for this mod so eagerly that he was almost going mad. Although this mod isn't as powerful as the equivalent exchange mod, it can be said to be Fang Mo's favorite mod. The Twilight Forest mod, as the name suggests, is an adventure-based mod. It adds a dimension to the MC world, a dimension where there is no day-night cycle, everything is enveloped in eternal twilight in a tranquil forest. According to the official setting of the Twilight Forest, this forest once nurtured a very prosperous civilization. However, now everything has declined and only eternal starlight shines over everything. You can find traces of this ancient civilization in the remains of broken walls, relics, and certain creatures. Now, this forest has new rulers. Magic traces can be found everywhere. Mysterious castles on highlands, thorn forests surrounding them, trolls underground, giants above in the sky, nagas in the forest swallowing everything, enigmatic witches. Of course, there's also the Hydra lurking in the fiery marsh, and twilight wraiths atop the dark tower. The Aurora Palace's Snow Queen and the tombs of Night Phantom deep underground. It's a dimension filled with adventure and the unknown. If you want to explore the ultimate secret in the Highland Castle, you must eliminate these magical creatures one by one, harness their power to overcome obstacles, and rule over all. Of course, the above is just a description in the setting. In fact, the difficulty level of this mod is not high. With Steve's current gear, he can pretty much dominate this world without injury. The reason why Fang Mo likes this mod is not because it's powerful or anything, but simply because he genuinely enjoys it. The content is interesting, the settings are exquisite, and the balance is good. He truly never tires of playing it. Take the Hydra boss, for example. Fang Mo wasn't lying when he cheered for the Hydra. He genuinely loves the Hydra from the bottom of his heart. After all, he needs to have it meal after meal. Yes, a serving of Hydra meat can almost instantly refill one's hunger bar. It's an indispensable main dish in the Eternal Twilight Feast. Fang Mo is really curious. What would the Hydra meat taste like in reality? Just thinking about it, Fang Mo can't help but want to open the linking book and return. What's wrong? Nick Fury probably noticed that there was something off about Fang Mo's expression, so he asked, "What are you thinking about? Is there anything strange about these collectibles?" "No, it has nothing to do with these collectibles." Fang Mo slowly shook his head, an uncontrollable emotion evident on his face. "What is it then?" Nick Fury inquired. "You might not believe me if I tell you." Fang Mo, with a subtle gesture, touched his face and said, "Right now. I suddenly really need to use the restroom. I hope you can stay here and not move. I'll be back after I go." "Hey." Hearing this, Nick Fury looked a bit perplexed. "Do you have a stomachache?" Him. Fang Mo quickly and seriously nodded. "Well, go ahead." Nick Fury, oblivious to the peril of his words, said with a puzzled face, "How long could it take for you to use the restroom?" "We'll wait for you here. The problem is, I have a bad habit when it comes to this." Fang Mo spread his hands and said, "Every time before I go, I have to return to Asgard to bathe, change, offer incense, and pray. Only then can I comfortably do my business." Nick Fury stared at Fang Mo for a while, doubting his sanity, and finally commented, "What? Before you use the restroom, do you need to bless your behind?" "Because I have constipation, I have to cast efficiency on the toilet and cover my behind with redstone every time," Fang Mo said, feigning helplessness as he touched his forehead. "You?" Nick Fury opened his mouth to say something, but he found himself at a loss for words. After a pause, he simply shook his head, "All right, if you want to go, then go." "Hey." However, after hearing their conversation, Tavan was utterly stunned. Indeed, Tavan had keen eyes and could see that Fang Mo's true form was not human but some indescribable, Eerie entity. Hence, the excuse of needing the restroom was obviously a lie. But looking at the 3 gems embedded in the glove, Tosen chose to play it cool. As a human, having physiological needs is normal. So, Tosen, with a smile, said, "It's rare to meet a distinguished individual like yourself. I have many topics to discuss with you. If you don't mind, both of you can wait here, and I'll treat you with the utmost courtesy." Wait. Before Tosen could finish speaking, Loki quickly interrupted, "Weren't you going back to Asgard to bathe and change? Take me with you. I don't want to stay here any longer." "Oh, all right." Fang Mo nodded, then immediately grabbed Loki by the collar. With a mere thought, a dark blue mist instantly enveloped the two of them. "Sir, please let Karina guide you to the guest room." After Fang Mo left, Collector Tosen smiled at Nick Fury, who nodded in return. He was indeed quite curious about alien technology, and studying it by himself was worth a try. But once Nick Fury left, Tosen's initially smiling face immediately darkened. He quickly walked to a communicator, turned it on, and shouted inside, "Immediately raise the bounty for the cosmic orb from 40 billion to 100 billion. Someone is collecting the Infinity Stones, the universe's treasures. I must find a way to collect at least one." Meanwhile, on the other side, the spaces died and filled with a blue-black mist. Fang Mo, holding onto Loki's collar, slowly walked out of it. "Thank heavens, I'm finally back." Seeing the familiar surroundings, Loki immediately breathed a sigh of relief. He then turned to Fang Mo and said, "Can you let me go now?" "Oh, off you go." Hearing this, Fang Mo let go of Loki's collar. Seeing this, Loki quickly scampered off and disappeared in the blink of an eye. After letting Loki go, Fang Mo hummed a tune and went back to his chamber, took a serious hot bath, and then used his customized ability from Steve to change into a new set of clothes. Fang Mo did not guess Tosen's little scheme. He just simply wanted to draw a prize and then play with the Twilight Forest module. After all, the timelines of the Marvel Universe and X-Men are different. One big event follows another, considering there are so many movies. So he estimated that if he went back and then returned, it wouldn't take very long. For this reason, Fang Mo did not bring Nick Fury back. He still wanted to go to Xandar with this guy in the future. After all, he always keeps his word. After bathing and changing, Fang Mo, as usual, offered incense to Notch. After that, with a snap of his fingers, Fang Mo summoned his stand, Steve, to draw blocks. Unlike his previous minor draws, this time Fang Mo had a whopping 18 lucky blocks. The quantity and scale were definitely formidable. These 18 lucky blocks came from various sources like the Chisel Unlocked in Asgard, Redstone Soldier Factory, Redstone Armory, Tinkering Enhancements, and many more, including those unlocked after touching the Reality Gem in the Void and those unlocked while randomly touching things in Tosen's collection, such as the Twilight Forest. Phew, I can finally draw prizes again. Fang Mo rubbed his hands together excitedly. Due to the sheer number of lucky blocks, Fang Mo didn't choose to draw one by one. Instead, he confidently selected a 10 consecutive draw. 10 bright white lights flashed. Immediately, 10 items appeared in Steve's inventory. Fang Mo excitedly saw that these 10 items were the Mercurial Eye, Atomic Dissembler, Neutron Collector, Helium-3 Queen Bee, the Disenchanter, Bedrock Golem Spawn Egg, Pedestal, Flesh, Quantum Sword, and Transmutation Table. Holy crap! Upon seeing the last item, Fang Mo's eyes widened. An unimaginable ecstasy surged in his heart. At this moment, Fang Mo was almost uncontrollably ecstatic, like performing an act of biting a lighter. No, considering his level, he'd probably go as far as to bite a gas canister. But as Fang Mo was drowning in ecstasy, he accidentally caught a glimpse of the void ring on his hand. It felt like a bucket of cold water was poured over him. A very ominous premonition suddenly arose in his heart. Yes, Fang Mo had previously been overjoyed when he drew the void ring because it had the ability to decompose and transform matter, turning waste materials like rotten flesh, dirt, and cobblestone into iron ingots, gold ingots, diamonds, and the like. However, when Fang Mo excitedly tested its function, he found out that the ability could not be realized at all. It was not for any other reason. It was because Fang Mo did not possess the main body of the equivalent exchange module. Without the module's main body, it meant that the concept of EMC value had never emerged in Fang Mo's world. The transmutation table's ability is simple. Throw something in, and it will be decomposed and recorded on an alchemy array. The item itself would then be decomposed into EMC value. Later, you can use EMC value to freely create any item you have decomposed. But if a world doesn't have the EMC setting at all, would the transmutation table still be useful? Chapter 178, Steve Chapter 177. Fang Mo immediately verified his conjecture. He made Steve open the transmutation table and tried to throw some materials into it. However, just as he thought, because he did not load the principle of equivalent exchange module, Steve did not manifest any rules related to EMC. Hence, the transmutation table became useless. After all, it cannot break down items without an EMC value. Ah, this is so tough. Looking at the portable transmutation table in Steve's hand, Fang Mo couldn't help but sigh deeply. Without an EMC setting, the things in his hands have become completely useless. Should he keep it for when the equivalent exchange module is activated? This gadget is actually quite easy to make, so there's no need to keep it. But if he doesn't keep it, it feels kind of frustrating. Forget it, I'll just make it real. Fang Mo shook his head, trying not to think about it, and began to check other lottery items. This time, in Asgard's luxurious 10 consecutive draws, the items he got were really good. The first item. The Mercurial Eye from Equivalent Exchange. Theoretically the most useless artifact, if a Klein star is inserted into it, it can place blocks on a massive scale in the game. However, Fang Mo currently has no EMC value, so this is also considered a semi-useless item. But considering the background setting of the equivalent exchange mod, it might be useful after being made real. The second item. Atomic Dissembler. To be honest, Fang Mo was stumped by this for quite a while before he finally remembered its origin. It's from an ancient mod called Mechanism, which is an adjunct to the Industrial Age. This mod, during the days when the industry used UU matter, already had particle accelerators and settings similar to postmodern liquid UU copying everything. In addition, the mod also introduced an upgraded version of the Nano Sword, the Quantum Sword, an upgraded version of the Quantum Suit, and the final equipment, the Ring of Quantum and Ring of Antimatter. They were once considered the holy grail for tech enthusiasts. Unfortunately, the author eventually abandoned the project, leading to the mod's demise in the 1.6 era. Atomic Dissembler, as the name suggests, is a kind of technological version of the destruction. It can shoot out a straight force field that can decompose matter into atomic dust, while it will also be partly affected by the force field. Of course, in the game, it's a mining item. Right-clicking clears all blocks in a 3x3x128 area and causes some damage to the user. For mining, this is a handy tool. But the problem is, Fang Mo doesn't play industrial mods. He doesn't even understand how to make a power generator. And this atomic dissembler can only consume energy from the industrial age, i.e., EU electricity. So what should he do? So this is another item that needs to be made real. After all, its setting is quite powerful, able to break down matter into atomic dust. Even if it's on the tech side, he could probably go to Stark to borrow an arc reactor to charge it, right? The third item. Neutron Collector. A basic item in the Avaricia mod, its function is to collect cosmic neutrino dust. 9 are combined to make one neutrino particle, and then 9 more are combined into a cosmic neutrino ingot. Avaricia's description of the cosmic neutrino ingot is the heart of a dense star, turned into an ingot. The cosmic neutrino ingot is very important in the game. It can not only make Avaricia items but also be compatible with Tinker's construct, becoming a weapon material for Tinkers. Therefore, the neutron collector shouldn't be made real, it's better to place it directly in the MC world. Fourth item. Helium-3 Bee Queen. It's obviously a product from some forestry beekeeping subsidiary, Fusion Happy Bee. But in Fang Mo's view, it's utterly useless, even worse than a pile of poop. Fifth item. The Disenchanter. There are many mods that deal with reverse enchantments. Fang Mo doesn't know which one this belongs to. The function is to reverse the enchantment from a weapon. Similarly, it can bypass the anvil and directly shove the enchanted book into the weapon. It can even combine 2 of the same type of enchantments. For example, 2 sharpness I can be combined into a sharpness 2. Useful, but not very. Sixth item. Bedrock Golem Spawn Egg. Jet. Seeing this item, Fang Mo showed a somewhat subtle expression. This is the first time he drew a spawn egg. But this thing? Bedrock? He knows about the Iron Golem, but this Bedrock Golem? Oh boy, that's something. For a moment, Fang Mo didn't even know if he should materialize it. After all, he's never brought any creatures out of the MC world. The main issue is not knowing whom these creatures will listen to. If it operates on the Iron Golem's mechanism, if Fang Mo hits someone, and the damn Golem mistakenly thinks the person is a villager, turning to attack Fang Mo, that would be awkward. So, he feels this thing needs more testing before deciding whether to materialize it. 7th item. Pedestal. It's also an item from the equivalent exchange mod but far from a divine artifact. It's just a pedestal. Depending on the item placed on it, it will produce different effects. For example, putting a watch of flowing time on it can speed up the surrounding machines. Placing a vulcanite amulet will keep the sky clear forever. As for the repair talisman, it can slowly restore the durability of equipment and tools. Fang Mo doesn't play industrial mods, nor does he have a watch of flowing time. So, the significance of this item isn't much. 8th item. Flesh. This has been introduced several times before, so no need for a lengthy introduction. Fang Mo also finds it strange why he always draws this item. 9th item. Quantum Sword. An upgraded version of the high-tech weapon Nano Sword from the Industrial Age mod. However, the exact mod source isn't clear since several industrial submods have an item named Quantum Sword. It's a weapon with a very awkward positioning. Clearly not as useful as Tinker's Construct and also needs charging. But the problem is, can Fang Mo even make a generator? Fang Mo estimates that this thing will be materialized again or simply wait until Stark marries Pepper, then give this thing to him as a gift. He just doesn't know about the Western gifting customs. There might be taboos about giving swords, umbrellas, shoes, clocks, etc. Regarding the 10th item. I mentioned the transmutation table before, so I won't go over it again here. Looking at the 10 items in Steve's inventory. Fang Mo pondered, stroking his chin. These 10 items all seemed quite good, but none of them directly boosted one's power. They were more for auxiliary purposes. After some thought, Fang Mo once again controlled Steve and drew the remaining lucky blocks. 8 beams of white light flashed. Steve's inventory was filled with some odd items. Fang Mo noticed that these 8 items were the Philosopher's Stone, Scarlight Ring, Flesh, Cow in a Jar, World Anchor, Spa Unit, Cosmic Meatball, and Liquid Antimatter Bucket. Ah, this. Upon seeing these items, Fang Mo was taken aback. How should I put it? These items seemed even more chaotic than the previous ones. Philosopher's Stone. Many anime or games have items related to it, even being dubbed the endgame of alchemy. However, in the equivalent exchange mod, the Philosopher's Stone is merely the starting point of alchemy. Its functions are quite limited. It can shoot a pearl to turn in-game creatures into others, like turning cows into horses. It can also transform stone into cobblestone and sand into gravel. Somewhat useful, but not hugely so. The only thing about this item that intrigued Fang Mo was that pressing C opened a crafting menu. This meant that even in the real world, holding the Philosopher's Stone allowed one to craft at will, without always having to return to the Minecraft world. Apart from the Philosopher's Stone, there's not much else to talk about. Scarlight Ring. A jewelry item from the Defiled Lands mod, which slowly restores health when worn. Its effects are similar to the Terra Firma trait of the Tinker's Construct mod's Emerald. Flesh. God knows why Fang Mo drew this J-beta thing again. Cow in a Jar. Seems to be from some kitchen mod. Inside the glass jar is a cow that produces an endless supply of milk. A godsend for foodies, but useless for Fang Mo. World Anchor. An item from a Railcraft mod that keeps chunks active. Combined with the previously obtained Neutrino Collector, it can produce cosmic neutrinos in large quantities when AFK. Spa Unit. A world-destroying weapon from the Bamboo mod, the source of a global flood. However, after experiencing the transmutation table's capabilities, Fang Mo is now a bit worried about whether this device could really destroy the world. After materializing, would it just turn into an ordinary hot spring? Cosmic Meatball. A food from the Avaricia mod. It seems to be crafted from various meats and a pinch of neutron dust. Eating it instantly fills your hunger bar and grants a strength 2 boost. But instead of keeping it in the game, Fang Mo would rather taste it in reality. Liquid Antimatter Bucket. This thing made Fang Mo pause. There are many Minecraft mods that introduce antimatter. But liquid antimatter that can be bucket? That's rare. If Fang Mo remembers correctly, this should be from the Abyssal Craft mod. However, it's pretty useless in the game. Instead of letting it collect dust in his backpack, he might as well use it to blow up a world for fun someday. Even with limited knowledge about the tech side, Fang Mo knows antimatter is terrifying. Just a few grams have immense power, yet now he has an entire bucket of it. It's well known that the bucket capacity in the Minecraft world is quite large. So, wouldn't a full bucket of liquid antimatter be enough to obliterate a planet? Chapter 179, Steve Chapter 178. I have to say, Fang Mo has really collected quite a lot of lucky blocks this time. He drew 4 items from the equivalent mod alone, 2 from the Endless Greed mod, and even the actual Antimatter Apocalypse bucket. To be honest, he definitely profited a lot from this. However, the number of items he got this time is just too many. Just testing these items will take Fang Mo a long time to complete. Thinking about this, Fang Mo decided to return to the MC world first. After all, he has spent quite some time in the Marvel Universe. Not only did he hatch the Ender Dragon, but he also defeated Malekith, obtained the Reality Stone, unlocked several mods in Nidavellir, crafted the Infinity Gauntlet, and even glimpsed the Collector's Collection, unlocking the Twilight Forest mod. Even the Fire Giant Surtur was turned into a firework by Fang Mo. Fang Mo's idea is simple. He plans to try out the 18 items he won from the lottery in the MC world first. If they are useful, he'll keep them, if not, he'll make them real when he returns to the real world. No sooner said than done. With a thought, Steve directly opened the linking book. A rolling black fog instantly gushed out, swallowing both Fang Mo and Steve. The familiar feeling of weightlessness was fleeting. When he opened his eyes again, Fang Mo was already in the MC main world. Woohoo, let's get to work. Without expressing amazement as before, Fang Mo jumped straight out of bed, left his room, and began inspecting his domain. As for Steve, he was doing the usual. Changing equipment in the storage, and then going mining. While Steve was mining, Fang Mo checked his iron farm and emerald factory. Nothing had changed at the emerald factory, the villagers were still wealthy, and he had filled several chests with emeralds. He wondered when he would unlock more chest mods, as his resources were almost overflowing. However, there was an issue with the iron farm. As everyone knows, the principle of the iron farm is to have villagers summon iron golems, which are then killed in bulk, with the dropped iron ingots collected. But when Fang Mo looked at his iron farm, he discovered that these cursed villagers weren't summoning iron golems anymore. Instead, they were summoning workbench golems, clay golems, glass golems, bookshelf golems. Opening a chest. Dang! Clay, planks, glass, spider silk, leaves, sandstone, workbenches. Fang Mo immediately threw all this junk into the lava and, with a headache, rubbed his temples. Adding mods was supposed to be fun, so why wasn't he enjoying himself now? More golems. Fang Mo recalled the mods he unlocked and roughly guessed which mod might have caused the problem. He had little experience with this mod, but from what he just saw, it probably added a new summoning mechanism for the villagers, allowing them to summon various golems at random when in danger, rather than just the original iron golems. In that case, the iron farm is basically ruined. Cursing, Fang Mo drove these villagers out of the iron farm and pushed them into the Tinker's Furnace, letting them join the Emerald Splash Fountain team. This time, returning to the MC world, Fang Mo not only brought 18 items, but he also unlocked as many new mods. As a result, the underground world underwent earth-shaking changes. Tinker's Construct expansion, Metallurgy, just these 2 mods alone, introduced various ores to the underground world. Things like shells, prismatic stones, talc, arsenopyrite, electrum, lightning lava, potash, glowstone, gold drill. Steve wandered underground for a long time, encountering very few ordinary stones. Everywhere was filled with these ores, and his backpack couldn't hold any more. He was unsure which was useful and which wasn't. Even just copper ore, there's a huge variety of them. Luckily, Steve can now teleport back to the city instantly. Otherwise, just running back and forth would be a major hassle. After mining for a while, Fang Mo decided to expand the storage room. Given the influx of new ores, the current storage could no longer accommodate them all. From when Fang Mo first arrived in the MC world until now, he has accumulated countless resources in the warehouse controlling Steve. So, expanding it is a major project, especially since there are no resonant storage boxes or diamond chests or other large-scale storage blocks available yet. It took Fang Mo almost 3 days just to upgrade the storage. After all, now Fang Mo's entire home is contained in the Geokist. Any expansion requires redesigning the placement of the Geokist. But given Fang Mo's current situation, the thing he lacks the least is time. After expanding the new storage, Fang Mo began testing the items he had won from the lottery. Though it's called testing, many items couldn't be tested. For instance, the Mercurial Eye, Atomic Dissembler, Quantum Sword. These things require energy to use, and Fang Mo had none to test with. Then there's the Helium-3 Queen Bee. Fang Mo doesn't know how to keep bees. Even if he did, he hasn't yet figured out the forestry mod, so he couldn't build a bee box. How was he supposed to keep them? In his stomach for fusion? Wow, that's a real monster zero. Even Godzilla would kneel before you. Anyway, after some testing, Fang Mo roughly determined which items needed to be materialized and which could remain with Steve. Items like the Mercurial Eye, Atomic Dissembler, Pedestal, Quantum Sword, Transmutation Table, Cosmic Meatball, they weren't much use in the MC world, so they needed to be materialized. However, the Neutron Collector, Helium-3 Queen Bee, the Disenchanter, Philosopher's Stone, World Anchor. These items are more useful in the MC world, so Fang Mo decided to leave them in the MC world or carry them with Steve for convenience. As for the rest, things like the Spa Unit, Bedrock Golem, Scarlight Ring, Fang Mo decided to throw them in the backpack for now. These items are usable in both worlds, so he'll have to think it over before deciding. After sorting out the general ownership of these items, Fang Mo couldn't hold back any longer. He directly controlled Steve to dig a 2x2 pit on the ground, filled it with water, and surrounded it with small chrysanthemums. Finally, with the toss of a diamond, thunder fell from the sky, and the water pit turned into a dark purple portal. Haha, Twilight Forest, here I come. Fang Mo laughed loudly, then jumped eagerly into the Twilight Forest. Chapter 180, Steve Chapter 179. Haha, Twilight Forest, here I come. Facing the purple portal in front of him, Fang Mo laughed heartily and took a bold leap. Accompanied by the familiar purple particle effects, Fang Mo's vision plunged into a brief darkness. When his sight was restored, he and Steve were already in a completely different world. The sky seemed to be frozen by some terrifying magic. It was as if the stars were caught in a bizarre chaos, both the stars and time seemed to halt simultaneously, causing the entire world to enter a perpetually silent dusk. Fang Mo looked around. He realized he was in the midst of a vast forest. Unlike the shorter oak forests of the main world, the trees here were exceptionally tall and upright. They were a species called the sky tree. The black trunks had numerous white and grey patterns. The trunk alone stood more than 10 blocks high, branching out to form the canopy that covered a vast area. The starry sky cast a faint twilight, shining through the gaps in the trees onto the ground. Occasionally, fireflies could be seen in the forest, dancing among the branches, emitting a faint light, adding a dreamy touch to the environment. What a familiar environment! Fang Mo gazed silently at the surroundings, a nostalgic look in his eyes. He really loved the Twilight Forest mod. Every time he entered the Twilight Forest, it felt like coming home. Every boss here was a genius with a pleasant voice. He loved staying here. Fang Mo had never imagined that one day he could actually set foot in this space-time. Every plant, every landscape, and even every creature here was incredibly familiar to him. Wow, this deer looks so cute. Fang Mo couldn't help but touch a deer beside him. The design of this model, those eyes, it's just like a comedian, so adorable. After saying this, Steve immediately drew a large sword and with a swift motion turned the deer into several chunks of deer meat. After getting some deer meat, Fang Mo quickly got Steve to work. The terrain of the Twilight Forest was complex. Simply using a mini-map mod made exploration challenging, so experienced Twilight adventurers usually crafted a magic map using materials found here. Although Fang Mo couldn't remember the crafting recipes of industrial mods, he could craft from the Twilight Forest with his eyes closed. Fang Mo, controlling Steve, shot down a crow and plucked a feather from it. He then gathered a few torch berries from a nearby cave and finally took out some glowstone dust. On the crafting table, he combined the 3 items to form the core of the magic map. He then surrounded the core with 8 pieces of paper, quickly crafting a magic map. Let me see. Using Steve's vision, Fang Mo quickly discerned their current location. On the left is the hedge maze, on the right is the plains, and there's a lich tower. Below is the dark forest, the phantom night tomb, and 2 small caves nearby. Well, that doesn't look good. Better explore upward. Fang Mo stroked his chin, quickly deciding the direction to head. The exploration of the Twilight Forest had a specific order. Many beginners ran around aimlessly. Some went straight to the dark forest and were blinded, while others stared cluelessly at the magic barrier on the lich tower. In reality, there's a specific order to defeating these bosses. This is why the Twilight Forest doesn't have a guide spirit. Otherwise, the guide would probably say something like, "Adventurer, explore the areas ahead later." Or something similar. According to the settings, the first boss that needs to be defeated in the Twilight Forest is the Jungle Naga. This thing is a terrifying giant anaconda, usually living in some ruins of the jungle. Due to the Naga's years of living in the ruins, its body has gradually been influenced by a certain power. Its scales are not only as hard as iron but also have a special effect that resists magic. Only by killing the Naga and using its scales to make armor can one resist the powerful witches with magic on the plains in the settings. Of course, these are just the background settings of Twilight. The actual Naga. Steve killed it with just 2 strikes. I have to say, the attribute broadsword is really useful. Western swords are also good since they pierce armor and cause direct damage. After dealing with the Naga, an achievement emerged in Fang Mo's mind. Achievement, Naga Hunter. The first one. While controlling Steve to pick up the spoils from the ground, Fang Mo murmured to himself and then ran towards the location of the second boss, which is one of the few plains in the Twilight world. On the boundless Twilight plains, a huge lich tower stands silently. Normally, adventurers should enter from the entrance below, then fight various monsters inside for countless rounds, struggling all the way to the top of the tower, to finally face the terrifying lich. However, Fang Mo doesn't play by the rules. After confirming the location of the top of the tower, Steve built some blocks under his feet, directly stacking his way to the top. He then broke through the ceiling, jumped in, and went straight for the lich's head with relentless blows. The lich boss is quite interesting. Upon spawning, it's surrounded by several damage-reducing shields. While these shields are active, not even his sword can harm it. To break these shields, generally, you would have to use the lich's own power. It shoots magical orbs at players. If the players reflect these orbs back, it will break one of the lich's shields. Once all shields are gone, you can start dealing damage. But, as mentioned before, this is the general approach. Fang Mo, not wanting to waste time, had Steve pull out several instant healing potions and vigorously splashed them on the lich's crown. Although the logic behind it is unclear, this method does break the lich's shields. As a result, the lich couldn't stand against Steve's great sword. It fell dead, dropping a heap of miscellaneous equipment. The second one. Fang Mo had Steve collect these items, and amidst the clutter, he found a zombie scepter. Zombie scepter. Looking at the zombie scepter in Steve's hand, Fang Mo instinctively touched his chin. The lich boss drops 4 scepters, 3 in earlier versions, each with different abilities, corresponding to its own attack patterns. This zombie scepter can summon one or multiple zombies with power boosts to fight for you in the game. However, these summoned creatures eventually ignite after some time and perish. Of course, this is a feature in the game. In reality, the actual capabilities of this item are still quite intriguing. After dealing with the lich, Fang Mo didn't bother with the lich tower. The materials inside weren't precious to him, and handling those monsters would be quite troublesome. So, he had Steve dig through the wall, making a leap of faith. Just before hitting the ground, he placed a bucket of water to negate the fall damage. After defeating the second boss, the lich in the Twilight, there are more places for Fang Mo to go. According to the background settings, the lich's scepter contains powerful magic, enough to disperse the mosquito swarms in the swamp, illuminate the eternal darkness in the black forest, or resist the cold in the snowy forest. This means that Fang Mo's upcoming boss challenges are no longer linear but have branching paths. He can make different choices based on his preferences. The final boss in the swamp is the Hydra in the Fire Swamp. The final boss in the Snowy Forest is the Snow Queen in the Aurora Castle. As for the final boss of the Dark Forest, it's the massive Twilight Wraith. To ascend to the final castle and challenge the barren highlands, all these bosses must be defeated. Of course, the order in which they are defeated doesn't matter. Fang Mo pondered for a moment, then shouted, "Long live the Hydra!" After that, he rushed toward the swamp. Just as to defeat the Lich, one must first defeat Naga to obtain scales. To defeat the Hydra, there's also a prerequisite task, which is to solve the problem of the Minotaur in the Swamp Palace. As everyone knows, mushrooms can grow on cows in the MC world, and the legendary Minotaur is a half-human, half-bull creature wielding a huge axe. So, deep in the maze of the Twilight Swamp, the half-human, half-bull Minotaur, due to staying underground without sunlight for a long time, has developed a lot of fungi on its body due to the dampness of the swamp, turning it into a half-mushroom, half-bull, half-human monster. In any counter game, this is definitely a monster that would cause one's sanity to plummet. However, in the MC world, adventurers are not afraid of it. They kill it, cut off its meat, and stew it with the mushrooms on its body into a soup. After consuming this bizarre meat soup, the appetites of the Twilight adventurers greatly increased. All of them said that they were no longer afraid of anything, and even if the King of Heaven came today, they would try to taste what the Hydra tasted like. The Twilight Swamp Labyrinth is actually quite annoying. After all, the author of Twilight understands the nature of these players. No door? Okay, I'll make one. So, to prevent this phenomenon, the author of Twilight placed a layer of bedrock between the two layers of the maze. Also, the building blocks of the maze are so hard that ordinary pickaxes find it difficult to dig through. Even if Fang Mo is an old player, he still inevitably wasted some time here. But he didn't leave empty-handed. After all, there are many good things in the Twilight Swamp Labyrinth. Like the true artifact of the Twilight Forest, the uncrafting table. The core item to craft this is hidden in a chest somewhere in the Swamp Labyrinth. Chapter 181, Steve Chapter 180. In the depths of the Marshland Palace is the lonely Minotaur. Before he could react, he fell under Steve's Imperomite sword. The third one. Fang Mo had Steve pick up the loot and casually remarked. It must be said that the labyrinth of this ghostly place is quite annoying. If one doesn't make a map of the maze, it's easy to get lost. Fortunately, Fang Mo has a mini-map module that allows him to see the general structure of the maze. But as annoying as it is, there are indeed many treasures inside. The pedestal mentioned earlier has already been found by Fang Mo. In addition, he also found steel leaves and iron tree ingots. As for food, Fang Mo found labyrinth pancakes and steaks dropped by the Minotaurs. Indeed, the guardians of this marshy maze are the Minotaurs. After all, the lonely Minotaur is the king of the Minotaurs. And Fang Mo, being a war god, naturally wouldn't spare these Minotaurs. He's so efficient, killing one after another, never wanting to stop. If he had unlocked more modules, like a box mover, Fang Mo would have wanted to move the Minotaur spawner back to his base. He could then set up an assembly line for automatic production of Minotaur steaks. That's what a true war god does. He can't get enough beef. After plundering the entire marsh maze, Fang Mo destroyed all the Minotaur spawners and left the area humming a tune. Unlike the labyrinth, the location of the Hydra is open air. In the center of the marshland is a red swamp. The power of the Hydra has tainted this swamp, creating lava lakes on the ground. According to the setting, the Hydra is the strongest creature on land, opposing the powerful Twilight Ghast in the sky, each ruling over the forest's earth and sky. The creature resides in a massive semicircular nest. Even in the game, it has a hefty amount of health and armor. It's one of the few creatures that can withstand continuous blows from an Imperomite broadsword. But how could a mere boss beat Steve? Now, both Fang Mo and Steve have armor stacked to the heavens, and a bite from the Hydra doesn't even reduce their health. So after a short battle, the Hydra dropped a lot of junk. The fourth one. Fang Mo said, and then started checking the loot. In addition to the boss's unique skull, it also dropped several pieces of Hydra steak and a few bottles of burning blood. This is also a special material. Since the blood of the Hydra contains burning magic, if iron is combined with it, one will obtain a magical metal called burning iron. It's worth mentioning that since Fang Mo unlocked many Tinker's Construct add-ons, there is now a link between the Twilight Forest mod and the Tinker's Construct mod. Whether it's steel leaves, iron tree ingots, or burning iron, all can be used to craft tinker's tools or armor. After dealing with the Hydra, Fang Mo visited the glacier. There isn't much to explain here. In theory, it's similar to fighting the Hydra. First, defeat a precursor mini-boss, then take down the final boss of the area. The perimeter of the Eternal Glacier has a huge ice cave inhabited by a group of snowmen. And among them, the largest and furriest one is called Yeti. No, its name is Snow Beast Alpha Yeti. Because the center of the glacier is extremely cold, adventurers must kill all the snow beasts, skin them to make coats, only then can they withstand the severe cold of the Ice Palace. Die, Yeti! With a shout from Fang Mo, the snow beast Alpha Yeti fell dead. The fifth one. Fang Mo turned and left without looking back. There was no choice, after all, the snow monster clan was too simple. They couldn't be compared with the minotaurs at all. So, in the snow monster's cave, there was nothing but ice and debris. After dealing with the Snow Alpha King, Fang Mo directly took Steve to the Endless Glacier. Above the glacier, there was a castle formed by the colorful auroras, and at the very top, the Snow Queen stood silently. Just as Steve began to break through the outer wall, a sudden ice puck was thrown at them. The damage wasn't severe, but it was quite insulting. So Fang Mo didn't bother being polite. He instructed Steve to draw his great sword and charge. Given that the Snow Queen was relatively frail and couldn't take much abuse, Steve swiftly struck her down. The icy shards scattered, and the cold aura dissipated. The Snow Queen perished, leaving only her head as a trophy and a tracking bow spinning silently on the ground. The sixth one. Fang Mo picked up the tracking bow from the ground, nodding in satisfaction. This is good. Maybe Hawkeye can have a play with it. I wonder if he's able to take a bath now. After defeating the Snow Queen, Fang Mo's only target left was the last one. At the top of the towering tree in the center of the dark forest, a colossal Orghast resided. Of course, before that, Fang Mo had to visit the nearby Night Phantom's tomb. This place was inhabited by goblins and gnomes. Entering was a bit of a hassle, one needed to place the heads of other bosses on the altar to unlock the tomb's entrance. After some thought, Fang Mo placed the Snow Queen's head on the altar. As the doors slowly opened, the goblins and gnomes inside looked up in surprise. All they saw was a blocky figure with a huge sword charging towards them. After that, there was no more after that. Although it's also a dungeon, the Night Phantom's tomb was relatively poor, nowhere near as wealthy as the Minotaurs. But when it came to getting lost, both were equally frustrating. Fang Mo wandered around for quite some time before finally finding the Night Phantom's tomb on the second level. This boss was made up of 6 phantoms, probably some potent goblin or gnome. Since there were 6 of them, Steve had to slash 6 times. The 7th one. In some ways, this creature was much more durable than the Snow Queen. After defeating the phantom, Fang Mo unlocked an achievement called Command Arsenic Iron Mechanism. It was a device in the Ghast Tower, similar to a puzzle game. Typically, one would need to solve puzzles from the bottom, exploring their way up to the top of the tower. But Fang Mo, as usual, used a massive pillar to reach the top directly. In the depths of the dark forest, atop the Dusk Tower, it was said that its owner was connected to the ancient civilization of the Dusk Forest. However, an unknown experiment disaster wiped everything out. Now, a massive Orghast occupies the place, wandering the broken top of the tower. It was a creature somewhat similar to a ghast but many times larger, with crimson and fierce patterns on its body. It usually drifts around the tower with its eyes half closed. Around it, smaller ghasts also floated. Although Fang Mo could now fly freely, his avatar Steve hadn't mastered this skill. So, defeating the Orghast was a bit troublesome. According to the original process, one should first defeat the Snow Queen and then use the dropped arrows to attack the Orghast. However, having mastered the game, Fang Mo not only had a dagger but also a sword in hand. This time, he didn't use the gold greatsword. Instead, he kept throwing ranged weapons, slowly whittling down the massive creature. Number 8. After dealing with the Twilight Ghoul, Fang Mo found his loot in the box. A large pile of arsenic, lead, and iron ores, skulls, and a few bottles of burning tears. The use of these tears is the same as burning blood, both are just tools for crafting burning iron. And after dealing with 8 bosses in total, a sound of achievement finally rang in Fang Mo's mind. Achievement unlocked, Final Showdown. According to the game, after defeating the Hydra, Snow Queen and the Twilight Ghoul, the magic acid rain gathering above the highlands has dissipated. Now, one can directly challenge the final boss. However, before that, there's actually one more mini-boss to fight. A long time ago, Fang Mo had already obtained the Twilight Thorn and had introduced its effects. This thing is a natural barrier that grows around the highlands. Most means to destroy the thorns only make them multiply and then harm the player in return. Unless one uses the troll clan's treasure, the Lamp of Cinders. But this item is hidden by the trolls inside a huge block of obsidian. It's not regular obsidian but giant obsidian, a unique block in the Twilight realm. It can't be mined by ordinary means, only with a giant pickaxe held by a Cloud Peak giant. The Cloud Peak giant is right above the troll cave. Normally, one should first find the magic beans, plant a beanstalk, and then climb up slowly. But Fang Mo, well, let's just say everyone knows his personality. With a pillar that reaches the sky in hand, Fang Mo directly confronts the Cloud Peak giant. This creature is quite interesting. It copied Steve's model and enlarged it, meaning if Steve has a skin, these giants will also have the same skin. Number 9. After defeating the Cloud Peak giant, Fang Mo, with the giant pickaxe in hand, returned to the troll cave and obtained the Lamp of Cinders. However, after obtaining this item, Fang Mo didn't rush to the final castle on the highlands. This thing. He looked at the lantern in Steve's hand, his thoughts gradually spreading out. Fang Mo knew best how annoying the Twilight Thorn is. If it became real, it would be more troublesome than the original wood escape technique. The more you fight it, the more it multiplies. Unless you use something of a nuclear bomb's caliber to blast it, it's truly a nuisance. Yet, the Lamp of Cinders can instantly burn a large area of Twilight Thorns. So, if this Lamp of Cinders were made real, what would it become? Chapter 182, Steve Chapter 181. Fang Mo did not delay for too long. Soon, he used the Lamp of Cinders to carve out a path through the thorn bushes. The originally tough and robust thorns turned into grey ashes under the high magical temperature emitted by the Lamp of Cinders. They turned into powder with just a touch. After passing through the thorny jungle, Fang Mo quickly arrived on a vast plateau. On this wasteland plateau stood an endless group of castles. The main bodies of these castles were made of a pristine white rock, with faint magical runes that were incomprehensible. They were interconnected by drawbridges or corridors, looking incredibly majestic. Yet, even such magnificent castles couldn't escape the catastrophe of the ancient times. Now, under the constant erosion of time, even the stones beneath the castle began to crack and weather. The surrounding thorns even extended onto the castle, making it look desolate. Since the end castle was not completed, Fang Mo didn't find anything of value there. He had Steve, presumably a character or companion, scout the area, and quickly discovered one of the final bosses ruling the castle at the very center. A kobold. Well, it wasn't really a kobold. It was just that the author was too lazy and hadn't finished creating this boss. But the players were eager to play, so he simply put a kobold there and indicated, perfunctorily, that they should treat it as the boss. Its stats were quite high, with a lot of HP and attack damage. However, the AI and model were simply copied from the kobold, making it pathetically weak. With a few slashes, Fang Mo killed it. And with the kobold's death, Fang Mo's journey in the Twilight Forest also nearly came to an end. It's hard to put into words. The first time Fang Mo came here, he felt like he was hitting cotton with all his might. It was extremely uncomfortable. After all, entering the End Castle was tough, dealing with challenges like killing the Hydra and the Twilight Wraith. But after unlocking all the prerequisites and entering, he found out the author had abandoned the storyline, which was quite upsetting. When Fang Mo first encountered the Twilight Forest, the author of Twilight was so lazy that he didn't even put a kobold in the castle. All that was left for Fang Mo was a cold, silent, empty plateau without any monsters. After exploring the entire castle, he only found a wooden sign in a spacious basement, which indicated that there should have been a boss there. Now, this author is indeed slowly updating the mod. According to the settings given, there were several bosses in the castle. One stood on the central terrace of the castle, ruling everything, which was the kobold Fang Mo had killed. Another was imprisoned deep underground in the castle. Of course, there were bosses set up in other locations, like at a stairway turn or inside another tower. Good grief, what's this, 8 to how setting? Ah, it's over again. Standing at the top of the end castle, Fang Mo looked down at everything below and couldn't help but sigh deeply. Why can't this author be a little more diligent? I really like this. Compared to other adventure mods, the Twilight Forest's questline is not particularly long. Even for beginners, it's possible to complete it in just a few days. However, what sets the Twilight Forest apart from other mods is its balance and enjoyment. Even after completing the quests, there's still much to explore and study within it. Take, for instance, the hollow mines of the Twilight Forest. They come in 3 sizes. The smallest mine is barren, looking almost like a burial mound from the outside. It has few ores inside, and the space is very narrow. The only upside might be the fewer monsters inside. On the other hand, the largest mines are the complete opposite. They are spacious inside, with abundant ores hanging from the ceiling. Coal, redstone, and lapis lazuli, all in clusters of tens, sometimes even dozens. Of course, there's also a wealth of metals like iron, copper, tin, and gold. Occasionally, one might even spot clusters of diamonds and emeralds in the central areas of the mines. Throughout these large mines, one can find reward chests and monster spawners. Apart from the usual insects, goblins, and vanilla mobs, there's also a type of ghost that can pass through walls. This can be a nuisance, especially if you're playing as Steve and can't fly. The number of monsters inside feels overwhelming, to the point where placing torches feels pointless. In the past, when playing on servers, Fang Mo loved mining here. However, now things have slightly changed. Since his character, Steve, can't fly, as soon as he started mining, he was targeted by a swarm of creatures, constantly being attacked. Hey! Think you're special just because you're white? Fang Mo was immediately annoyed and had Steve retaliate with a dagger and darts. After temporarily clearing out the monsters in his field of vision, Fang Mo had Steve rush forward, destroying the monster spawners one by one. It's such a pity, Fang Mo said, shaking his head regretfully as he watched the spawners explode. If he had the relocator mod, he could have transported these spawners, set up a mob drop assembly line, and it would have been much more convenient. To be honest, Fang Mo doesn't really need the ores. He's not into industrial mods, and with Tinker's Construct alone, his demand for ores isn't high. But, sticking to the idea of since I'm here and never leave a Minecraft cave empty, Fang Mo had Steve mine all the ores in the mine. However, it's undeniable that the ores in the large mines are both abundant and varied. In no time, Steve's backpack was full. But this wasn't a challenge for Fang Mo. He had previously expanded his storage by separating the storage area and using a nested world in a chest. Now, Steve placed a geochest on the ground and opened it with a right click. A massive warehouse made up of many chests appeared before their eyes. Steve calmly stashed away coal, ores, and other items. Once his backpack was emptied, he closed the geochest. The massive storage vanished, replaced by the mine's interior environment. Monsters, reward chests, and piles of ores were everywhere. And of course, the monster spawners he hadn't destroyed yet. Wait a second. Monster spawners? Fang Mo suddenly noticed this oversight, his eyebrows slightly furrowing. Then, he had a sudden realization, slapping his thigh forcefully, damn. The geochest. Yes, it was just when he was setting up the storage. The space transfer of the geochest had moved those monster spawners as well. This meant that the priority of the geochest was quite high. Not only could it capture various living entities, but it could even bring in things like monster spawners. With this in mind, does it mean his monster factory can start operating? Ha 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 ha, that's great. Thinking of this, Fang Mo became excited. I can finally farm minotaurs on autopilot. Even though the swamp dungeon had already been destroyed by Fang Mo. The area of the Twilight Forest in the game is as vast as the main world. So theoretically, there's an endless number of dungeons here. Around the Hydra's lair, there are 4 different swamp mazes. Thus, Fang Mo can just change direction and easily bring back those minotaur spawners. If he wanted, he could even move his home to the Twilight area. After all, he had placed the geochest everywhere in his house and could pack everything up and take it with him. However, considering that the Twilight Forest is always in twilight. Even if Fang Mo likes it here, he has no intention of settling down. Steve's actions were swift. In no time, Fang Mo had excavated the entire large mine and immediately rushed to the swamp maze. Capturing a spawner doesn't require a large geochest. A mere 3x3 geochest is enough to bring the spawner back to the main world. Fang Mo captured 7 Minotaur spawners alone. Besides the Minotaurs, Fang Mo also captured some redcap goblins, tower golems, and mini phantoms, tiny wraiths, spawners. In fact, Fang Mo didn't just want to kill Minotaurs. The main reason is that not only can they drop meat, but they can also drop golden axes. If produced in bulk, they can also yield gold ingots. Manual slaughtering is also fine, partly for experience and partly for increasing the damage of the golden broadsword, which is very cost-effective. As for the remaining redcap goblins, tower golems, and mini phantoms, they're all monsters used for farming materials. Redcap goblins can drop coal and can also drop iron pickaxes and boots. Combined with the tower golems that drop iron ingots, it can compensate for the malfunction of the original iron farm. As for the mini phantoms, they can drop ghast tears. Fang Mo vaguely remembered that with certain upgrades, one could farm ghasts en masse, but he hasn't reached that technical level yet. So, he simply replaced it with the mini phantom spawners, which served a similar purpose. Unlike his previous returns to the Minecraft world, the number of mods Fang Mo unlocked this time was simply too many. Not to mention the Twilight Forest, even Tinker's Construct had a lot of new content waiting for him to explore. Fang Mo is preparing to set up a monster slaughter assembly line, plans to dig for some new ores, and also intends to study the newly added elements in Tinker's Construct. Honestly, he felt overwhelmed with the amount of content. Yet, he was still eager to do more. And just at this time, Steve brought him 2 books of ages from a dungeon. Chapter 183, Steve Chapter 182. Fang Mo never imagined this. He actually found 2 Book of Ages in a dungeon chest. After all, the drop rate of this item is too low. Apart from the dungeon chests, whether it's the various chests of the Twilight or any other chests, Fang Mo had never seen a trace of this thing. Fang Mo even doubted whether this item had been modified. But today, he was quite lucky. These 2 Book of Ages. One of them has the word Bleach written on it. As for the other one, it has the English letters Jojo written on it. Wow! Upon seeing these 2 Book of Ages, Fang Mo was instantly shocked. Thanks to the localization mod, he instantly understood the meaning of the first era book. Although the original meaning of the word should be something like bleach, who hasn't heard of the famous Big Three? And this era book named Bleach corresponds to the world of Soul Reapers, Shinigami. Amazing! Shinigami! Upon seeing this book, Fang Mo immediately set an ambitious goal for himself. I've decided, I'll personally hand over hair gel to Eisen. Of course, apart from this era book of the Shinigami world, Fang Mo also saw another book. However, I believe there's no need to introduce the 4 letters Jojo too much, right? Steve's concept of stand and the stand users that Fang Mo often mentions actually derive from this anime. Unlike other anime, this anime spans a vast period of time internally. The concept of stand only starts to appear in the 3rd part. Before that, the anime is more about the epic battles between humans and vampires, and the ultimate beings. Some people are not interested in this anime because of its unique art style. But whether it's the famous quotes or the iconic scenes, many netizens have heard of them. Phrases like "I'm throwing away my humanity," Jojo, "Ora ora, ordinary office worker," "Oh, you're approaching me, but I refuse," "Old man, your stand is the most useless," "Do you remember how many breads you've eaten?" "Za Weirdo," and such memes are really everywhere. Tisk. It feels like both of these worlds are quite fun. Fang Mo looked at the 2 books in Steve's backpack, feeling a bit indecisive for a moment. The Jojo world is more fun to mess around in. Judging by the nature of the time-traveling books Fang Mo used before, he probably would start with the first generation Jojo, which is Jonathan Joestar, and progress the storyline from there. Perhaps he could even tease a young Dio Brando. For example, performing a castration surgery on him, becoming the greatest fear in his heart. In fact, Fang Mo quite likes Dio, the villain. He's very thoroughly evil and possesses the unique charm of a villain. But, his liking for Dio has nothing to do with wanting to see Dio suffer, right? Besides, the Jojo world has the advantage of a more compact storyline. Typically, each season of Jojo covers a short period, like the first season's battle against vampires, or the second season's fight against ultimate beings, or the 3rd season's trip to Egypt. These plots last a few days to a few months at most. With Fang Mo's patience, he can easily follow along with the storyline. Once the story concludes, he can comfortably return to the MC world. When he re-enters the Jojo world next time, it will probably be about the stories of the new generation of JoJos, and he can enjoy another full round of the plot. As for the world of Bleach, translated as Death God here. Honestly, the fun in the Bleach world isn't as much as JoJo's. But Bleach is damn cool. Who didn't want to chant a Kido spell or perform a Bankai during their adolescent years? In terms of coolness, Tite Kubo never bowed to anyone. Drawing comics is just for fun, but writing poetry is the real goal. Because of this excessive emphasis on style and coolness, many netizens joke that the characters in Bleach don't fight with spiritual pressure, but with their sense of fashion. Whoever shows their big move first loses. Thinking about it, it seems to make sense. Fang Mo really wants to give Eisen some hair gel. Or help Tosen pick at his eyes, letting Steve try clicking left and right buttons on Komamura with a bone. Among the 3 anime series Big 3, the boss with the most oppressive aura is definitely Eisen. Maybe other bosses are stronger, but when it comes to showing off, no one can compete with him. Damn, why is it so hard to choose? Looking at the 2 books of time, Fang Mo was genuinely torn. Both worlds have what he wants. One is the stand arrow, translated as insect arrow here. The other is the Hagyaku, translated as burst orb here. The significance of these 2 items to their worlds is comparable to the Ten Tails' impact on the Naruto world. With such great items, Fang Mo definitely won't miss them. But which one to collect first? Fang Mo hasn't decided. Forget it, I'll decide later. Unable to make a decision, Fang Mo decided to set it aside for now. There's still a lot to do in the current MC world. After returning several times before, Fang Mo's mentality has gradually settled and become stable. He's not in a hurry to go to a new world. He carefully stored the 2 time-traveling books. Fang Mo quickly resumed his work. Steve is currently still mining furiously in the underworld. Of course, he's mainly mining for new Tinker Construct materials, and incidentally bringing back some stones as building materials. It can't be helped. Large assembly lines just use up a lot of materials. The Minotaur Tower is the easiest to build. Place the monster spawning cage, then use water to push the monsters down. In the center of the tower, Fang Mo made a simple sticky piston device that can trap monsters there. If you want to spawn monsters manually, just open the piston. A stone will block the central passage, so the Minotaur will stand on this stone and then be mercilessly slaughtered by Steve. Of course, you can also spawn monsters automatically. Just close the piston and the stone disappears. The structure below is somewhat similar to an iron golem farming machine, but considering the characteristics of the Minotaur, which floats in lava, Fang Mo thought about it and replaced the lava with flame flowers from various biomes. This flower, harvested from the nether, burns everything that steps on it, but it doesn't burn the items they drop. It's a typical situation of you step on me today, I step on you tomorrow. Thus, the Minotaurs are like being thrown into hell, being burned alive in fiery hell, suffering immensely before being allowed to die in pain. After being roasted, the meat that falls off these Minotaurs is cooked. This also saves Fang Mo a significant amount of coal expenditure. Besides the Minotaur Tower, Fang Mo also replicated the iron golem machine using tower golems from high towers. He had no choice, after all, these villagers began summoning various underworld puppets, so Fang Mo had to find a way to get a lot of iron from elsewhere. Of course, the same goes for redcap goblins. These creatures can spawn coal and also iron. Although the iron spawning rate is low, they produce a lot of coal, so it feels like killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Last but not least, the mini phantom monster spawner. Fang Mo was almost driven crazy by this thing. It's called a mini phantom, but in reality, it's just a super scaled down version of the Twilight Wraith. They fly around aimlessly in the sky, and gathering them together for the kill is too hard. If they were as big as the original Wraiths it would be okay, but these creatures are too small. They don't get stuck easily, and they have a wide spawning range. If the spawning tower is too small, they spawn outside and fly everywhere, truly giving Fang Mo a headache. Fortunately, in the end, Fang Mo thought of a devious method. Fill the monster cage with damage-inflicting blocks. Like Twilight Thorns. Some people might think that Twilight Thorns cannot be mined, but don't forget, Fang Mo has the Box of the World, which can collect some of the Twilight Thorns. Using the characteristic of Twilight Thorns, which can spread infinitely when mined, Fang Mo filled the spawning room with thorns and then burned the excess parts with lamp of cinders one by one. This way, many vertical thorns were created in the spawning room, each separated by a few blocks. Small twilight wraiths, when they spawn, will fly aimlessly in the sky and then get stuck on these thorn columns. In a few seconds, they will be killed by the thorns, and their drops will be collected by water streams into a funnel and finally stored in a box. It's said that playing too much with redstone will make you lose your humanity. But Fang Mo refuted this with his own actions. He stated that losing humanity has nothing to do with redstone. If you stay in the MC world for a long time, you'll lose your humanity sooner or later. For adventurous players like Fang Mo, making him study redstone technology would be more painful than killing him. Anyway, using his own crude methods, Fang Mo made several monster spawners without redstone structures. He happily read the updated Tinker Construct manual while listening to the various monsters' screams and cries. He read it for 3 full days. Even Fang Mo was a bit shocked. There were too many updates in the Nidavellir Tinker Construct add-on, and now even he was a bit confused. Just the Metallurgy mod alone added 34 new materials to Tinker Construct, many of which are alloys, which overwhelmed Fang Mo. Moreover, because of various Tinker Construct integrations, Fang Mo's Tinker Construct tools can now not only be upgraded automatically or manually without limits but are also compatible with materials from almost all mods. Not to mention the Twilight Forest, there are Naga scales, steel leaves, ironwood ingots, fiery iron, and night metal that can be used as materials. In addition to a lot of industrial metals like bronze, lead, iridium, platinum, aluminum, nickel, yin steel, elementium, luminium, amber gold, fine iron, high-strength alloy, hard carbon, cubic boron nitride, redstone amber gold. Fang Mo even saw applied energistics Certus quartz, psi metal, astral ingots, and the red and dark matters from equivalent exchange, as well as blood magics bound and sentient ingots in the book. But he hasn't even unlocked these mods yet, right? Even rubber, advanced alloy, carbon fiber, energy metal, and UU metal from the industrial era were listed. Of course, there's also redstone arsenal and redstone armories, redstone crystal, extreme cold ender, and redstone and amber gemstones from some unknown mod. This is just after reading the material list. Fang Mo was completely baffled. Chapter 184, Steve Chapter 183. In Fang Mo's view, Tinker's Construct is a very useful mod. Whether in terms of balance or inclusiveness, it is excellent. But precisely because of this, various expansions and add-ons for it are constantly emerging. The original Tinker's Construct mod is of moderate strength and difficulty. However, the more add-ons you add, the more its strength and difficulty rise linearly. Fang Mo unlocked an entire set of Tinker's Construct tools in Nidavellir. After a series of patient research, Fang Mo found that his Tinker's Construct mod was getting a bit overpowered. As everyone knows, Tinker's tools have modification slots. Redstone increases speed, lapis lazuli increases luck, nether quartz sharpens the blade, and the diamond reinforcement can make the tool indestructible. Besides, there are effects like life stealing, levitating, beheading, fire aspect, soul binding, and so on. These modifications are very appealing. But the problem is, the original Tinker's tools have a limited number of modifications. The Tinker's tool Fang Mo previously made had at most 3 modification slots. Of course, if you use paper as a material, you can get an inscription trait that adds an additional modification. However, there are still too few modification slots. So, the Tinker's Level Up mod was introduced. This mod gives Tinker's tools experience points. As players continue to use the tools, they gradually level up. Each time they level up, an additional modification slot is added, starting from clumsy and slowly transitioning to adept, expert, master, legendary, grandmaster, and even the ultimate god tier. Of course, if you think leveling up is too slow, there's another creative skull mod you can use. In the Tinker's mod, there is an item that can endlessly add extra modification slots to weapons, called the Creative Mode Modifier Skull. But just by its name, one can tell that it's a privilege available only in creative mode. However, a senior player added a crafting recipe to use it in survival mode. 1 diamond reinforcement, 4 gold ingots, and 4 nether stars can craft this item. For newcomers, these requirements might seem a bit stringent. But Fang Mo doesn't think so at all. Joking. Is this thing super cheap or what? Now I have a zombie pigman tower. Although occasionally other monsters interfere, the efficiency isn't maximized. But he really isn't lacking in gold. Regarding the durability enhancement plate. For obsidian, one can go to the end to dig pillars, or use a spring machine to cool lava in the nether. Both are easy solutions. As for the last nether star, it's a bit tricky to make. The wither is easy to kill, but the wither skeleton skulls are hard to obtain. However, Fang Mo isn't afraid of this. When he was previously a tool person on the server, he sneakily learned some real tricks from his partner Xiao. The metallurgy mod added a new ore to MC's nether called molten gold. After molten gold was integrated with Tinker's construct, it endowed the tools with two special characteristics, inscription and duplication. Inscription can add an extra enhancement slot, as mentioned before, while duplication can occasionally duplicate your drops. This means you can increase production and obtain an extra enhancement slot. Tinker's Construct Alloy expansion also added a new mineral to MC's nether called Valeria. The special feature of Valeria is called Congenial. Its description is double the damage to known targets, which means the first monster killed by a new weapon will be targeted by this weapon. Afterwards, attacking this type of monster will deal double damage. In theory, if you kill a wither skeleton with a Valeria sword, the next time you attack a wither skeleton, it will do double damage. Besides that, in the further expansions of Tinker's construct, there's also an alloy named Terax. Its feature is slaughter, which many find confusing. But its code essentially means discard experience and increase monster drops. When slaughter is combined with the duplication feature, when these two codes touch each other, they achieve an odd effect similar to a multiplicative explosive tag. Fang Mo witnessed his partner Xiao kill a wither with this sword, and it astonishingly dropped 7 nether stars. This thing can even break the mechanism of monsters only dropping one item. Mutated zombie kings are the same. After being killed with one hit, they dropped a full 6 giant hammers. Is this even humanly possible? Honestly, Fang Mo was so shocked by that scene that he knelt on the spot. Because it was so shocking, Fang Mo unusually remembered the recipe for this sword. Firstly, it's made of a Valeria plate, molten gold handle, Terax handle, silver broadsword blade, then 3 types of slime crystals and gold ingots, with the gold handle fused into the sword. The molten gold handle and the gold handle each add an enhancement slot to the sword. Enchanted golden apples and diamond blocks can also add an enhancement slot. Thus, this sword has 6 enhancement slots. You should know, the sword itself already has a beheading 2 attribute. If you enhance all these 6 slots with beheading, the sword can become a beheading 8 weapon with an 80% decapitation chance. Because of the targeting effect of Valeria, and the holy effect of the silver broadsword blade that specifically counters the undead, this sword will kill a wither skeleton with 1 hit, and sometimes killing 1 skeleton will drop 3 skulls. Fang Mo hummed a song and effortlessly made this powerful weapon, flamboyantly naming it Wither Skeletons Must Die, which perfectly captures the real essence of this sword. In short, with this sword, Fang Mo quickly collected a large number of withering skeleton skulls. Then using a similar method, Fang Mo made another sword specifically for slaughtering the withered named Withering Must Die broad-bladed sword. So, after a short time, he had accumulated a lot of nether stars. With enough nether stars, Fang Mo eagerly began crafting new equipment. For instance, the previous Labyrinth, purely made of end ingots and acid-resistant aluminum, clearly couldn't bring out its full power. Moreover, the materials used for the large sword were limited, giving a feeling of cutting corners. It's likely that Sir Tour wasn't comfortable inside, so Fang Mo simply replaced it with the broad-bladed sword. The broad-bladed sword requires 2 wide sword blades, 1 core, and 1 tough handle. Fang Mo flipped through the Tinker's manual for a full 7 days, almost wearing it out before finally deciding on the materials for this sword. For the blade, he chose fiery iron from the Twilight Forest and stellar metal buried deep within the desert biome. The core used a material called flame crystal. The handle was made of sunstone. Lastly, using 3 types of slime and gold nuggets, the resonating power of end metal ingots was infused into the sword. In this way, the sword had many features, including brilliance, twilight, automatic smelting, overheating, flammable, sun power, melting, gentlemanly, brown magic, shadow suppression, and many more. Just hearing the names of these features, you would know that this was a sword that would surely make Sir Tour happy. But that wasn't all. Because Fang Mo also made a lot of creation skulls. This means he could freely enhance attributes on this sword. Firstly, he maxed out redstone for attack speed and nether quartz for sharpness. Lapis lazuli, representing fortune and looting, was added, even though it's unclear of its use in the real world. Diamonds increased attack power, emeralds added durability, and everything possible was enhanced, even beheading was maxed to level 10. Blaze powder gives a blazing effect, or flame attachment, which is the sole property of this sword and needed to be maxed. Life stealing from wither bones was also maxed. There's also the soul binding of the nether star, glowstone dust's luminescence, spider silk's binding. Basically, if he could afford it, he added it. After all the Tinker's enhancements were done, Fang Mo turned to the original enchantments. Actually, because Tinker's weapon system is different from the original, it's not compatible with the original weapon enchantments. But Fang Mo had a mod called the Damagic Table, which not only removes magic but can also apply the original enchantments to Tinker's weapons, making them forcibly compatible. This could even apply enchantments not meant for the weapon. So Fang Mo happily added Flame Protection, Sharpness, Undead Slayer, Arthropod Killer, Flame Attachment, Looting, Sweeping Edge, Durability, Vampirism, Expansion, Soul Binding, Endless Swords, Beheading, Impact, Loyalty, Power, Fire Loss, Infinity, Efficiency, Smelting, and Experience Repair. As always, everything possible was maxed out. At this point, Fang Mo's divine sword was finally forged. This is truly the flame demon sword that burns through 9 realms. So that's how it is. Looking at the Leviatine in Steve's hand, excitement showed on Fang Mo's face. Is this the joy brought by selling swords? It seems I'm really meant to be a swordsmith. After feeling this joy, Fang Mo couldn't help but continue. So, following this principle, he made 2 more weapons. One was an artisan integrated battle axe with ulu and spun gold axe blades, an electrified stone binding section, a lightning lava handle, and attributes fused from olivine. This axe has features like wind assault, whirlwind, shock, electrical sensing, thermoelectric release, and thunderous fluctuations. Combined with haste, sharpness, fortune, beheading, durability, diamonds, emeralds, soul binding, and other enhancements, plus a lot of original enchantments. This was scarier than a storm axe. As for the last one, it was really impressive. Fang Mo even used cosmic neutrons. This was also a broad-bladed sword, but the blade was made of cosmic neutron and blunt gold, with a 0-element core and a sunlight alloy handle, and the properties of shattered bedrock were fused into the sword. Just hearing the names of these materials, you'd understand. It's a simple and unpretentious, simple and weighty sword. Chapter 185, Steve Chapter 184. The third weapon made by Fang Mo is very simple. There are no flashy thunder, storm, or flame attacks. Its characteristics are heaviness, density, neutron aggregation, durability, suppression, extreme weight, melting, and leveling everything. Each feature adds to the weapon's mass and density. You see, just the blade made of cosmic neutron material needs 8 ingots. The description of the cosmic neutron ingot is the heart of a dense star, turned into an ingot. Of course, the concept of a star is a bit exaggerated. In Avaricia, a cosmic neutron particle is described as about 35.6 million tons. Fang Mo did a quick calculation. Without considering the weight of materials like sunlight alloy, dull gold, 0-element, and shattered bedrock, the blade alone weighs about 2.5632 billion tons. Some might not grasp this. For perspective, if Nick Fury's Sky Carrier weighs 100,000 tons, the sword in Fang Mo's hands is equivalent to 25,600 Sky Carriers. Damn, I rushed this. After calculating the sword's weight, Fang Mo couldn't help but curse, it's too heavy. I probably can't even lift it. I hate this. Yes, this sword is really too heavy. Fang Mo is currently unable to fully unleash the power of the Void Ring. With his current gravitational strength, it would be hard to lift the sword. Of course, there are ways around it. For instance, disconnecting the sword's gravitational link with the Earth. But even so, using the sword would be difficult, unless some Minecraft enchantments, like loyalty, could be effective. But since it's made, Fang Mo didn't plan to abandon it. So he still enhanced the sword with many abilities like speed, diamond, emerald, durability, knockback, soul binding, etc. Of course, he didn't forget the original enchantments. And after finishing these 3 weapons, Fang Mo didn't stop. Because there are so many features in Tinker's construct, leading Fang Mo's imagination to run wild. He also created things like disarmament swords, bleeding daggers, delicious atomic pots, blinding daggers, and more. These aren't necessarily for use. If not, they can be thrown like the treasures of Gilgamesh in Fate, raining down on enemies, which sounds fun, right? As he was figuring out what to do next, Fang Mo stumbled upon a strange enhancement method. It seemed to be a feature brought by the Magic Tinker's Construct mod, consuming enhancement slots and embedding various items onto weapons. He saw things from Forestry's Phosphorite, Thaumcraft's Quicksilver, Exorcism Soap, Botania's Dragonstone, runes, and various rare gems from different biomes, and something like sapphires from the cosmos. Sadly, apart from the biome gems, Fang Mo didn't have the other mods. Shaking his head, Fang Mo took out the gems and embedded them on his weapons, increasing their speed, durability, and power. And after all this, Fang Mo's Tinker's Construct research finally came to an end. After studying for so many days, Fang Mo's head was numb, so he needed some relaxation. He decided to send Steve to the Twilight Forest. This trip wasn't for monsters, but to capture bosses. Yes, since Fang Mo's awakening, he has taken many things from the Minecraft world, but never these living entities. He was curious about how they would turn out, especially the Snow Queen. He had high hopes for her, as the only humanoid female boss in the Twilight Forest. He even prepared a bed. Soon, Steve brought back a lot from Twilight, not just captured creatures but other interesting items. Things like torchberries, transformation powder, life charm, moonworm queen, magic beans, ore trees, and time tree seeds. Some of these are very useful even in-game, so Fang Mo was curious about their real-world effects. After exploring the Twilight, Steve captured a few villagers and golems. After that, Fang Mo studied some recipes he previously acquired. This recipe book displayed food-related items. Fang Mo, who hadn't played the Pam's Harvest Craft mod in years, was quite pleased. He flipped through and made some dishes he found interesting. Notably, since he unlocked an additional drinks mod from Pam's Harvest Craft, he could now make various drinks and beverages. Like margaritas, Long Island iced teas, Bloody Marys, mojitos, etc. Good thing, I don't have to hand peanuts to Uncle Logan anymore. Seeing this, Fang Mo laughed. The drinks produced in the Minecraft world must be delicious. Logan is truly lucky. Next time Fang Mo goes to the X-Men, he'll have to make Logan try them. After studying these recipes, Fang Mo spent a few more days. But in that time, Fang Mo gradually cleared his mind. He now knew which world he wanted to visit next. That is the Bleach. Of course, this doesn't mean Jojo doesn't like it. In fact, he also wants to go over there and cause some mischief, but the problem is that Jojo's combat power is too weak. Fang Mo has now acquired quite a few modules and has greatly increased in strength, so he especially wants to have a good fight with someone, and only the Bleach can satisfy him in this regard. Of course, the progression of time in the world of the Bleach is quite fast. The first major event there is the Soul Society arc, which is the story of the protagonist, Ichigo Kurosaki, invading the Soul Society to rescue his companions. Although it seems like a long story, it seems to end in just a few days. So, Fang Mo decided to follow this event first and then go to Jojo's side for some fun. By switching between them like this, he won't feel bored and can also use the characteristics of the Book of Ages to skip some unnecessary plots and directly start with the major events. It really feels like killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Thinking of this, Fang Mo immediately set off, and took out a few slime balls from the box, pretending they were hair gel. In the next second, Steve also packed up his equipment, and then opened the Book of Ages. Black mist particles gushed out instantly like a tide. With an expectant smile on his face, Fang Mo was engulfed by the black mist. Chapter 186, Steve Chapter 185. The black fog and the sensation of weightlessness disappeared at the same time, and Fang Mo opened his eyes. What he saw was a somewhat dilapidated rural street. The road felt extremely terrible, forget asphalt or concrete, there weren't even cobblestones. It was entirely formed from pure yellow mud and was uneven and potholed. On both sides of the road were some low, run-down buildings. It's worth mentioning that these buildings also looked quite old-fashioned. The better ones were Japanese-style classical wooden houses, but the worse ones were simply made of straw and mud. However, something was strange. The surrounding buildings were clearly very dilapidated. But if you looked straight ahead down the road, you could see many beautiful white buildings. These buildings mainly followed a Japanese aesthetic, and just by looking, they appeared very clean and majestic, in stark contrast to the messy street here. After observing his surroundings, Fang Mo quickly determined his location, Rukonga Street. Once he realized he had crossed into the world of Bleach, this place was easy to identify. In the world view of Bleach, there are 3 worlds, the human world, the hollow world, and the soul society. The human world is easy to understand. It's similar to Marvel's Midgard setting. When humans from the living world die, most of their souls go to the soul society. Most of them are untalented, ordinary souls, so they generally reside on Rukonga Street. The conditions on Rukonga Street are actually quite poor. While some areas are more affluent, the vast majority are no different from slums. The place where the Shinagamis live is in the center of the soul society, known as the Seireidii. Only those souls with talent are absorbed by Seireidii and transformed from ordinary souls into Shinagamis. The environment in Seireidii is naturally different from Rukonga Street, it's more like a luxury villa area. The gap between the rich and poor is like that between a tycoon and a beggar. Merely appearing on Rukonga Street wasn't enough for Fang Mo to determine anything. After all, there had been precedents before. When he was in the X-Men world, Fang Mo even crossed over to 18 years before the background story of World War I, when Sebastian was still mixing with the army. The timeline in the world of Bleach is even longer, even including arcs like the 1,000-year Blood War. That would be terrifying. Would you be scared if you were thrown back more than 1,000 years? But just as Fang Mo was thinking, he suddenly felt as if he was being watched by someone. Turning his head, Fang Mo discovered that there were people in the surrounding houses observing him, and it wasn't just one person. However, these people seemed to be afraid of him, hiding in door cracks, corners, or next to windows, watching him quietly. At the same time, their gazes didn't seem malicious. Fang Mo thought for a moment and decided to pull someone out to ask about the situation. However, what Fang Mo didn't expect was that as soon as he raised his hand, these people immediately panicked. Like frightened rabbits, everyone began to avoid him. The windows and doors were immediately closed, and those hiding in the corners quickly retracted their heads. Fang Mo's raised hand hung in midair, frozen in place. Although he was a bit speechless, Fang Mo quickly figured out their mindset after some thought. Yes, the power structure here was actually similar to the feudal times, with the souls living on this street being commoners, and the Shinigami being the warrior class, the two having vastly different statuses. Just by looking at Fang Mo, he didn't appear to be an ordinary person, so these ordinary souls were all adopting a better safe than sorry attitude to avoid getting into trouble. Since they were avoiding him, Fang Mo also didn't want to bother with these commoners. He looked up at the end of the street and walked directly towards the location of Seireidii. The Soul Society was indeed quite large. At first glance, Seireidii didn't seem to be far away, but actually walking there took at least half an hour. However, since Fang Mo was new here, he wasn't in a rush. He took it as enjoying the scenery along the way. As he got closer to Seireidii, the buildings on both sides of the road gradually became more prosperous. The houses made of yellow mud and thatch became fewer and fewer, until they were completely gone. Before long, Fang Mo arrived in front of Seireidii. However, before he could walk over, there was a sudden loud noise behind him, as if something had crashed into the ground. Turning his head, he saw an orange-haired hedgehog head rushing straight towards him. His target was not Fang Mo, but Seireidii not far away. However, before he could enter Seireidii, a row of giant stone walls suddenly fell from the sky, one after another crashing into the ground, stirring up a huge cloud of dust. Then, a giant suddenly burst out from the dust, blocking this orange-haired hedgehog head. Ah, this! Seeing this scene, Fang Mo was first stunned and then started laughing. He was originally worried that he might have time traveled to 1,000 years ago, but now the main character appeared right in his face, which put his mind at ease. Yes, the orange-haired hedgehog head in front of him was the protagonist of Bleach, Ichigo Kurosaki. The current situation was roughly that Ichigo Kurosaki, who simultaneously had the bloodlines of a Shinigami, Hollow, and Quincy, mistakenly thought he was a human. He rushed into the Soul Society to save his friend Rukia Kukaki. The loud noise that Fang Mo had heard was actually the sound of their arrival in the Soul Society. However, this guy was a bit naive. Before even entering Siridi, he was stopped by the gatekeeper. Thinking about this, Fang Mo looked back and indeed saw Orium Inu with orange hair, the muscular man Chad, the Quincy Uriu Ishida in white clothes, and a female black cat. As Fang Mo was observing them, Ichigo Kurosaki also made his move. The gatekeeper said that his job was to guard the gate and wouldn't let him in. He attacked Ichigo Kurosaki with an axe, but he was very weak and his attacks were easily blocked by Ichigo. In contrast, Ichigo swung his sword and directly shattered the opponent's axe. However, the funny thing was that this guy broke down and started crying when he saw his axe shattered, throwing the entire squad into disarray. Ichigo Kurosaki was, of course, also helpless, and subconsciously apologized to him. Unexpectedly, this moved the guy, who agreed to open the gate for him. Then, he used all his strength to lift the giant stone gate, allowing the group to quickly pass through. To be honest, this scene completely stunned Fang Mo. Because you admire others, you voluntarily open the door to let others in freely. Is this how you protect the owner's security? Have you ever considered the collective will of the owners? However, Ichigo Kurosaki is not an owner of the Soul Society, so he doesn't care about all of that. Seeing the door open, he immediately ran inside with excitement, but the next second he suddenly froze because the owner, no, a previously unseen Shinigami was blocking his way. This Shinigami looked quite friendly, with silvery, shattered hair and a smiling face, and a fine short knife hung around his waist. However, as soon as he spoke, everyone in Jidanbo was scared to the point of being as pale as death, their bodies trembling uncontrollably. You, guard the gate like this. With those words, a flash of silver light suddenly passed by, and Jidanbo's enormous left arm was instantly severed. Blood spurted out like a fountain, and Jidanbo's knees weakened, making him kneel on the ground. The massive stone gate slammed down on the back of his neck, but he still clenched his teeth and held on without falling completely. Just then, the silver-haired Shinigami spoke again. The existence of a gatekeeper is not for opening doors for others. As he walked towards Jidanbo, although smiling, a terrifying murderous aura was continuously leaking out of him. A defeated gatekeeper has no reason to exist, so it's better to kill him. However, Ichigo Kurosaki doesn't care about all that. Being the protagonist of a shonen series, seeing this scene made his blood boil, even curing his low blood pressure as he instantly unsheathed Zangetsu and charged forward. The silver-haired Shinigami drew his short knife and easily blocked Ichigo Kurosaki's attack. Yet, until then, Ichigo Kurosaki still hadn't realized anything, and even pointed Zangetsu at the Shinigami, saying, "You! How could you attack an unarmed guy? He is the one guarding the gate for you, and you treat him like this." He. The silver-haired Shinigami chuckled, completely ignoring him, and simply turned and walked away. Hey! Ichigo Kurosaki was also momentarily stunned. However, the next second, the Shinigami suddenly turned back around, his short knife aimed directly at Ichigo Kurosaki, transforming into a silver streak. Ichigo Kurosaki instinctively blocked with Zangetsu, but a tremendous force hit him, sending him flying back and colliding with Jidanbo. Subsequently, both of them were violently thrown out of the Soul Society. Since Jidanbo was flung away, the giant stone gate also slowly closed. Bye-bye. The Shinigami on the other side even specifically bent down, squinting his eyes and waving goodbye to them. You bastard! Ichigo Kurosaki angrily got up, but then suddenly froze because he noticed that next to that gigantic stone gate, a 2-meter-high rectangular small door had somehow appeared. An unfamiliar guy glanced at them and then walked in. Chapter 187, Steve Chapter 186. Upon seeing the small door next to the stone gate, Ichigo Kurosaki rushed over without a second thought. Ichigo Kurosaki. Upon seeing this, Yuryuki in her cat form immediately shouted, "What are you doing?" "Of course I'm going to save Rukia." While saying this, Ichigo had already rushed near the small door, and he even called out to his teammates, "Orium, Chad, Uriu, hurry up, there's another small door here." Hey! Upon Ichigo's reminder, Yuryuki also noticed this strange little door and was stunned. Wait, when did another door appear here? Isn't this wall made of Sekizeki stone? I don't know, but I just saw someone go in. Ichigo candidly replied, maybe he made it. Yuryuki was baffled after hearing this. Do you even know what Sekizeki is? It's specially designed to restrain all kinds of spiritual bodies and pressures, and you're telling me someone can just open a hole in it. However, Ichigo didn't care about that and continued to call his teammates. Ichigo, can you, wait for me for a moment? At this moment, Oriaminu spoke up, can I first help heal this gentleman's wounds? Hey! After hearing Oriam's words, Ichigo realized, yes, Jidanbo is still lying on the ground. Although he was indeed in a hurry to enter the Soul Society, it wouldn't make much difference to wait a little longer. After all, the man was injured while trying to help him, his arm is even missing. That's right, Ichigo, we should think this through. At this time, Yuriuki also reminded, there are many ways to enter the Soul Society, there's no need to fixate on that odd door. It might even be a trap set by the enemy. This, alright. After hearing everyone's advice, Ichigo looked at Jidanbo who was lying on the ground and finally nodded in agreement. Meanwhile, on the other side, Fang Emo had already walked through the small door into the Siraidii, and had even greeted Ichimaru-jin on the way. Hey, brother! Fang Mo's mood was clearly much better, and he was even humming a song. However, unlike him, Ichimaru-jin on the opposite side was a bit confused. He looked at Fang Emo and then at the door hole, which was as if it had been cut with a knife and axe. How did you do it? Do what? Fang Emo asked, what are you referring to? That's a sekizeki, said Ichimaru-jin, his face stiffening a bit, it can completely block spiritual energy and pressure. How did you manage to make a hole in it? Oh, you mean that? Fang Emo shrugged and laughed nonchalantly, we MC play, our journey is just like that, unconventional. You can't think that closing the door would make it safe, right? He, seems like you don't want to tell the truth. Ichimaru-jin, hearing this, also smiled and raised his short knife, in that case, I'll have to capture you for questioning. Come, aim here. Fang Emo was amused and pointed at his own head, don't say I didn't give you a chance. Shoot to kill, Shikai. Ichimaru-jin didn't say much and directly activated his short knife. The blade extended instantly and stabbed towards Fang Emo at a speed invisible to the naked eye. There was a bang, and a burst of sparks flashed across. Fang Emo tilted his head back, while Ichimaru-jin's Shikai slid as if it had missed, embedding itself in the stone wall. Ichimaru-jin was stunned. However, in the next second, Fang Emo had already appeared in front of him. Ichimaru-jin instinctively wanted to withdraw his knife and flash step away, but a big hand grabbed his head and started rubbing it vigorously. Tisk, you didn't make good use of the chance I gave you. Fang Emo rubbed Ichimaru-jin's head with a smile tinged with a sneer, shaking him until he was disoriented. Ichimaru-jin quickly retracted his short knife and pushed Fang Emo away, managing to escape using a flash step. After putting some distance between them, Ichimaru-jin looked at Fang Emo, still rattled. His Shikai had indeed hit Fang Mo's head, but Fang Mo's head didn't feel like any normal organism. It was incredibly hard, he couldn't have been mistaken about that. Steel skin. Ichimaru-jin squinted his eyes subconsciously. This is a hollow skill, how could it appear on a traveler? Steel skin. Upon hearing this, Fang Emo immediately started laughing, hey, please don't use steel, this garbage metal, to describe my defense. This is genuine vibranium skin. How would you describe a thick outer layer? Yes, it was mentioned before. Fang Emo created a set of armor for himself made of vibranium, which became invisible due to an invisibility potion, and took the form of a transparent force field when materialized. In addition to this, Fang Emo also had the defense power shared by Steve, and the toughness of his own skin. At present, very few things could break through Fang Mo's defense, except for cosmic treasures like the Infinity Stones. Ichimaru-jin's initial release definitely wouldn't work. In fact, if he wasn't worried that cosmic neutron matter would be too heavy when materialized, Fang Emo wanted to make himself a set of invisible armor using cosmic neutron matter. Neutron degenerate state armor, even Iwak and Eisen together probably couldn't break it. He. As Fang Emo was thinking, Ichimaru-jin nearby suddenly laughed. It seems you are quite confident in your defense. Ichimaru-jin smiled as he prepared to attack again, but you seem to have misunderstood something. I've killed many hollows with steel skin too. As he spoke, his dagger was unsheathed again. This time, however, Ichimaru-jin did not aim at Fang Emo but flew past Fang Mo's neck. Then, in the next second, the blade suddenly contracted, and Ichimaru-jin pressed down the blade. Fang Mo's neck rubbed against the rapidly retracting blade, like a high-speed circular saw, magnifying the cutting effect of the blade at this moment. Sparks flew out in an instant. Yet Fang Mo looked at Ichimaru Jin calmly. When the blade retracted, Fang Mo's neck was still unharmed. That's it. Touching his neck, Fang Mo couldn't help but glare at Ichimaru Jin. That's it? A Shinso? To kill me? Who are you? Seeing this, Ichimaru Jin was also dumbfounded. According to the information he had received from Eisen, the opponent couldn't possibly be part of the same group as the boy from before. Since you're also a fan of pure love, I advise you to put down your sword. Fang Mo spread his hands. I know your sword has tetanus, and can kill if it breaks defense, but you've seen that you can't break my defense. And even if you did, I would probably just need to drink a bucket of milk. Ichimaru Jin did not speak, but his expression became even more serious. How did he know about his true Bankai ability? I came to cause trouble, not to kill. Fang Mo continued, actually, every time I start, I'll kill indiscriminately once, but I really don't want to this time. Can you give me a chance? I'll trade you with hair gel. After saying this, Fang Mo directly took out a sticky green slime. You. Ichimaru Jin was about to say something, but footsteps suddenly came from behind. Captain Ichimaru. Accompanied by a deep voice, an exceptionally tall figure slowly walked over. The person was wearing a metal shell on his head and spoke with a buzzing sound. What happened here? It was the captain of the 7th Division, Komamura Seijin, on par with the captain of the 3rd Division, Ichimaru Jin. An intruder is trying to enter the Siraidai. Facing a fellow captain, Ichimaru Jin explained with a smile. However, the opponent's ability is a bit strange, his defense seems very strong. Oh. Komamura Seijin also turned his attention to Fang Mo. Fang Mo also greeted Komamura Seijin at the same time. Let's capture him first. Komamura Seijin immediately unsheathed his Zanpakuto. Since Captain Ichimaru says his defense is strong, I can use a bit of force. Tenkan. Accompanying Komamura Seijin's low shout, a hand holding a Zanpakuto appeared behind him, both of which were extremely large, even having a kind of cosmic feeling. And as Komamura Seijin raised his hand, the giant Zanpakuto also struck Fang Mo directly. However, with such a earth-shattering blow, Fang Mo didn't even dodge, the Zanpakuto directly hit his body. The next second, a huge roar sounded, and the ground seemed to shake, with smoke filling the air. Soon, the smoke cleared. Half of Fang Mo's body appeared in front of everyone. Of course, this doesn't mean that Fang Mo was cut in half or anything, but that the Tenken's greatsword happened to strike on top of Fang Mo's head. Although it didn't break the defense, the huge force directly hammered Fang Mo into the ground like a nail. What? Seeing Fang Mo unharmed, Komamura Seijin was also a bit surprised. But the next second, Ichimaru Jin fired the Shinso again, but this time it was different. Whether it was Bankai or previously hiding strength, even Komamura Seijin was a bit taken aback. A beam of white light shot towards Fang Mo in an instant. And this continuous beating indeed made Fang Mo impatient, summoning Steve with a thought. Steve was holding a vibranium sign in front of Fang Mo. Steve's rebound. Fang Mo said calmly, and then the tip of the Shinso stabbed into Steve. Nothing happened on Steve's end, but Ichimaru Jin's face suddenly changed, and a penetrating wound appeared on his stomach. As if pierced by his own Shinso. Captain Ichimaru. Seeing this, Komamura Seijin immediately shouted and then looked at Steve not far away. What is that thing? Even Ichimaru Jin, who was holding his stomach due to the injury, looked at Steve with a serious face. After seeing this, it was Fang Mo's turn to be surprised. They can actually see Steve? Chapter 188, Steve Chapter 187. Can you guys see this thing? Fang Mo pointed at Steve, looking a bit surprised as he asked the two people. What, should I not be able to see it? The person who answered was Komamura Seijin. Perhaps because his previous attack had failed, he started to get serious. Captain Ichimaru, since you are seriously injured, you should go back and get treatment. I can handle him by myself. Well then, I'll leave it to you, Captain Komamura. Ichimaru Jin indeed wanted to leave. His purpose here was merely to repel the intruders. However, the situation had clearly deviated from the plan. He needed to go back and inform Eisen. As for whether Komamura Seijin could handle the disaster, Ichimaru Jin didn't care. In a moment, Ichimaru-jin's figure instantly disappeared from the spot, and Fang Mo shifted his attention to Komamura Seijin in front of him. So why did you bring that iron helmet? Fang Mo curiously looked at Komamura Seijin. Are you mocking me? The voice of Komamura Seijin seemed slightly angry. He had realized during Fang Mo's teasing that this guy had definitely seen through his identity. Making that sound was provocative. Of course not. Fang Mo shook his head, then revealed a smile. I think we should become the best of friends. I will not become friends with you. While saying this, Komamura Seijin raised his Zanpakuto. The mission of the Godii 13 is to protect the Seiridii, and I will absolutely not allow you to act recklessly here. No. Before Komamura Seijin could finish speaking, Fang Mo seriously interrupted him. You will. Heavenly punishment. Komamura Seijin didn't continue the conversation, directly releasing his Zanpakuto to attack Fang Mo. Wood style. Fang Mo put his hands together, and immediately several thorns extended from his body into the ground. The next second, countless dark thorns sprang up from the ground, entangling Komamura Seijin. Trivial insect tricks. Upon seeing this, Komamura Seijin snorted coldly. The blade that was supposed to chop down was immediately turned into a horizontal sweep. The heavenly punishment blade swept horizontally, cutting off several thorns, but at that moment, more thorns erupted from the cut ends, directly entangling Komamura Seijin. Komamura Seijin struggled for a moment, but this thing was unexpectedly tough. Seeing Steve, the blocky monster, slowly walking towards him, Komamura Seijin realized he couldn't hide his skills any longer, preparing to activate his Bankai. Bankai, Kokage Tenjin. However, before he could finish speaking, Steve's hand suddenly had a bone in it, and he right-clicked Komamura Seijin. Then, black particles started to emerge from Komamura Seijin's body. Seeing this, Fang Mo was immediately overjoyed. Although he didn't know what was going on, these black particle effects only appeared when taming a wolf failed. Right-clicking other creatures with a bone wouldn't produce this effect. Failure is not terrible, it means there's a chance of success. So, Fang Mo's hand speed went to the max, and Steve right-clicked an entire stack of bones in an instant. And at the moment when the 64th bone disappeared, pixelated heart effects suddenly emerged from Komamura Seijin. His Bankai pose also came to a sudden halt, and he froze in place. What did you do to me? After quite a while, Komamura Seijin spoke hesitantly. Why do I feel like you have no ill intent towards the Seiridii? I never had any ill intent to begin with. Fang Mo smiled and shrugged. What bad intentions could a simple guy like me have? Ah, I see. Perhaps I was too abrupt before. Komamura Seijin unconsciously nodded. Zi. Calling a dog. Seeing this, Fang Mo tried making strange noises at Komamura Seijin again. Zi. Why are you doing this? Komamura Seijin also looked puzzled. Do we have a grudge? Why are you humiliating me like this? Is it not allowed? Upon seeing Komamura Seijin's state, Fang Mo also unconsciously nodded. It seemed that offering a bone in reality did not fully tame the other, but rather seemed like an act of gaining favor. Just because you've tamed someone doesn't mean you can do whatever you want. The other party still has their own thoughts. What they like and dislike hasn't changed, they're just very friendly towards you, or see you as very important. As for how things will develop, it's up to you to handle it. I didn't mean to humiliate you. Thinking of this, Fang Mo explained, you said I'm a Ryoka, right? Actually, I come from another world. In our world, Zi signifies goodwill. You just misunderstood. Of course, I now understand that here it means humiliation, so I won't use it anymore. Is that so? Due to the high level of goodwill, Komamura Seijin didn't doubt much and nodded. I see, it really was a misunderstanding. Also, it's rude to keep calling you a Ryoka. What's your name? Call me Fang Mo. Fang Mo said. Fang Mo. Komamura Seijin nodded. This isn't a place for a chat. Shall we go somewhere else? Wait, let me change my appearance. Fang Mo nodded, then with a thought, suddenly wore a Shinigami-specific outfit, and his features became ordinary. He then reached out and pulled out a Tinker Construct katana sword as his Zanpakuto and hung it at his waist. Okay, let's go. After transforming, Fang Mo directly spoke to a dumbfounded Komamura Seijin. Komamura Seijin didn't speak, turning around and walking in a certain direction. Fang Mo naturally followed him, and soon the two arrived at the barracks of Squad 7. After arriving at Squad 7's barracks, Komamura Seigen sat directly across from Fang Mo. Now we can have a good talk, Fang Mo. Back in his own place, Komamura Seigen didn't bother hiding anymore. He took off the iron shell on his head, revealing a large dog's head. Yes, it was a dog's head. Specifically, a Shiba Inu's head. Komamura Seigen's character setup is strange. He is said to be a soul that fell into the animal realm due to a major mistake in his previous life but did not die completely. He turned into a Shinigami in a non-human form and should technically be considered a descendant of the werewolf clan. However, no matter how you look at it, his appearance and color are very similar to a Shiba Inu. Thinking of Komamura Seigen's low ranking in the 13 court guard squads, Fang Mo couldn't help but think of a popular online comparison picture of Shiba Inus. On the left is a muscular and annoying Shiba Inu, and on the right is a useless one. The comparison is very apt for describing Komamura Seigen's abilities. Left side, activating Bankai Kokage Tenjin My. A powerful armor with great strength. Right side, woo woo woo, Eisen one-shot me with a black coffin and even took away my only friend, Tosen. I believe you've already figured it out. Komamura Seigen didn't know what Fang Mo was thinking and said, this is why I've been hiding myself. I am not a human, and even among the 13 court guard squads, I am the only heretic. Only the captain of Squad 9, Tosen, is my friend, but he's actually blind. It's really your mindset that's the problem. Fang Mo heard this and shook his head with a smile. I really admire your life philosophy. Loyalty is easy to talk about, but how many people in the world can actually achieve it? To be blunt, I really look down on those who are disloyal. As for you, I really want to be friends with you. Yes, Komamura Seigen's character in the original story is loyal. During the 1000-year Blood War, he even dedicated everything to these two words. Your magnanimity is extraordinary, just like the head captain. Hearing Fang Mo's words, Komamura Seigen seemed very pleased as well. However, before he could speak, Fang Mo said. So can I rub you a bit? What? Komamura Seigen was taken aback. Just a rub. Fang Mo simply gestured with his hand, it's a way to show friendliness where I come from. Elders occasionally pat the heads of younger ones, you know. I've lived for 300 or 400 years. Komamura Seigen couldn't help but say, even if we're talking about younger and older, you should be the younger one, right? I've lived for tens of thousands of years. Fang Mo didn't even hesitate when lying, you want to compare me? What? Komamura Seigen was stunned, not expecting Fang Mo to be deceiving him, but why do you look like you haven't aged at all? I share the same lifespan as heaven and earth, the concept of aging doesn't apply to me. Fang Mo spread his hands. Aren't you human? Komamura Seigen couldn't help but ask. Do I look human? Fang Mo countered, have you ever seen a human who can withstand blades and spears with their own defense without using spiritual energy? At this point, Fang Mo took out a piece of sekizeki. See this? This is a sekizeki. As he spoke, Fang Mo inserted half of his arm into the sekizeki and pointed at his own face, so, you call this sort of thing human? This. Komamura Seigen hesitated. It did seem to make some sense. No ordinary human could possibly do something like this. So let me rub you already, Fang Mo gestured to Komamura Seigen, I've lived much longer than you, so you're definitely my junior. Let me pat your head quickly. Still, no. Komamura Seigen hesitated for a long time and finally said, a real man keeps his integrity. I've thought about it, and I really can't do such a thing. I'm sorry, my friend. Although our ages differ greatly, I truly consider you a close friend. Tisk, fine then. Hearing Komamura Seigen say this, Fang Mo had no choice but to give it up. After all, he now knew that Steve could tame creatures. If Komamura Seigen falls for this, wouldn't your Yuki fall for it too? Steve's backpack is full of little dried fish. He could just feed them all at once later. Wouldn't it be nice to rub your Yuki directly? Chapter 189, Steve Chapter 188. Perhaps it was a sense of identification that was found in Fang Mo. Komamura Seigen talked with Fang Mo for a long time. From when he first came to the Soul Society and was ostracized by everyone, to later entering the Godai 13, receiving the care of the head captain, and slowly growing into a captain-level powerhouse who could stand on his own. Of course, Fang Mo was also genuinely listening to him. Although Fang Mo did grow closer to Komamura Seijin because of Steve's abilities, even gamers show different attitudes toward different NPCs, right? To be honest, Fang Mo really likes this big dog. Although Komamura Seijin is weak in the original work, regarded as the shame of the Godei 13 captains, and was instantly defeated by Eisen with a Kido spell, he fails multiple times when releasing his Bankai. But in terms of character, this Shikoku dog could truly be called a loyal dog. Even at the cost of his life, he would never betray his principles. In Fang Mo's view, that is already the biggest advantage. Weakness and strength can be improved through training or cheating, but if even the heart is corrupt, that's truly incurable, like Tanzu in Naruto or the celestial dragons in One Piece. Komamura Seijin is a Shikoku, not a sycophant. Who wouldn't like a big Shiba Inu that is both loyal and values honor? Anyway, they talked for a long time, during which Fang Mo even took out some food. Come, Shikoku, try this. As Fang Mo spoke, he reached for the Hydra steak that Steve handed him. A white light flashed, and reality shift had already activated. I used to eat this a lot. It's really filling, one piece is enough to give you energy. Old man has been wanting to ask since earlier. However, Komamura Seijin's attention was not on the steak but on Steve standing next to Fang Mo. What is this strange, angular thing? Modified soul? Or something else? Pardon my bluntness, it doesn't look like a living thing. Oh, this. Fang Mo casually explained, this is something that fights alongside me. If I have to say, it should be similar to your Zanpakuto. So it's another system of power. Komamura Seijin nodded subconsciously, no wonder I don't feel any spiritual pressure from you. It seems you are not fighting with Rishi, you're more like a vessel. Yes, this is the setting of the Soul Society, where everything seems to be composed of Rishi, including the Shinigami themselves. And as for the vessel, it probably means the physical body. Sorry, I am in an Ishi state. Fang Mo shrugged. Ishi. Komamura Seijin was puzzled, what does that mean? Extremely strong and tough, shining like a king, Fang Mo flexed his muscles, but you have to maintain a good mindset, or else there will be an Ishi explosion. Alright. The straightforward Komamura Seijin, not knowing that Fang Mo was joking, took it seriously. After all, he had personally experienced how tough Fang Mo's body was. Even the blade of his Zanpakuto couldn't break through the defense, which was crazier than the skin of a large hollow, right? But after Fang Mo answered Komamura Seijin's question, he suddenly smelled a tempting aroma. Only then did he turn his attention to the table. At the moment, 2 huge steaks were placed on the square table in front of them. Just how big were they? They were almost like wash basins, nearly 20 centimeters thick, like the chopping blocks used for cutting fish in supermarkets. They were still steaming hot and the Maillard reaction on the surface was perfect. Beneath the crispy, brown crust was the juicy Hydra fillet. What kind of meat is this? Komamura Seijin's dark dog nose twitched twice, and he couldn't help but drool a little. Why, is the aroma so enticing? Oh, this is the meat of the famous Hydra organization's mascot, Fang Mo casually said. It's a specialty from our side, very delicious. However, there's one thing you must do before eating, you must shout "Long live Hydra," otherwise you can't eat it. Is that so? Upon hearing this, Komamura subconsciously swallowed his saliva and said, so it's similar to saying let's eat. Exactly, Fang Mo solemnly said, it's like saying thanks to Hydra for sending the meat. I see, Komamura took it seriously and joined his hands together, then. Long live Hydra. After saying that, Komamura immediately picked up a piece of meat and took a big bite. Fang Mo didn't hold back either, cutting a piece for himself and putting it in his mouth. The moment the meat entered his mouth, a rich aroma and hot juice burst forth. Though the Hydra appeared to have rough skin and meat, it was surprisingly tender and tasty. Every chew stimulated the taste buds, making one want to take another bite immediately. The fat on the Hydra's meat had completely melted, seeping into every muscle fiber. Every bite released a rich aroma that went straight to the brain. Damn, this is so good. Fang Mo couldn't help but utter these famous words. Only then did he realize that he had been skeptical for no reason, food could indeed be delicious enough to make one lose control of their expressions. Maybe he just didn't believe it because he couldn't afford such delicacies. Of course, food causing clothes to burst is a bit too much, unless it's in the realm of food wars, where it makes sense. Not just Fang Mo, even Komamura was eating with his mouth full of oil. Being part of the werewolf clan, he naturally had some animalistic tendencies. When encountering such delicious meat, he just couldn't help himself and ate wildly. Soon, a huge piece of meat was completely devoured. This is the most delicious thing I've ever eaten, Komamura sighed contentedly. I've been in Soul Society for hundreds of years and never tasted something this good. Moreover, it seems to contain some kind of energy. Ah, you mean health regeneration? Fang Mo replied while chewing, that's the intended effect of Hydra meat. It offers a few seconds of health recovery, not as effective as potions, but it does heal. Alright, Fang Mo. Having finished eating, Komamura wiped his hands and returned to the topic, though we met late, we've become close friends. But I still have to ask, what are you here in the Soul Society for? I'm here to find something. Fang Mo cleared his throat and began making up a story. A long time ago, someone stole something very important to me. Now, I've heard it's here in the Soul Society, so I came to get it back and eliminate the thief. Is that so? Komamura began to ponder, considering your status as a Ryoka intruder, this could easily cause conflicts with other captains. Why not meet with the head captain? I can explain your situation. I doubt that would work, Fang Mo interrupted, shaking his head. I may have lost touch with Soul Society, but I've heard of Captain Commander Yamamoto Genrisai Ishigakuni. He values the face and honor of Soul Society more than anything, and on top of him, there's the Central 46. Do you think they would admit that someone in Soul Society stole my stuff? Or hand that criminal over to me? Upon hearing this, even Komamura was stunned. Though he's a loyal subject of Yamamoto, he's very aware of how the Central 46 operates. Just like Fang Mo said, admitting to the theft might not be in the cards, and it could even backfire on him due to his Ryoka status. Can I ask what was stolen from you? Komamura inquired. Fang Mo directly said, one of my friends was attacked, and something was taken from his soul. According to witnesses, the attacker is a reaper with extremely strong abilities, skilled in both combat and ghost manipulation, and also possesses an illusory Zanpakuto that can control the 5 senses. Extremely strong. Komamura Seijin was slightly stunned. How strong? Well. Fang Mo hesitated deliberately. Is it not appropriate to use you as an example? Go ahead. Komamura Seijin waved his hand nonchalantly. You wouldn't even last a round against him, Fang Mo stated bluntly. Impossible. Upon hearing Fang Mo's words, Komamura Seijin immediately retorted, I have great faith in my own abilities. Even against other captains, it's impossible that I wouldn't last even one round. Are you sure? Fang Mo glanced at Komamura Seijin. Of course. Komamura Seijin said confidently, aside from the head captain, I can hold my own against other captains. I may not win, but I won't easily be defeated. Alright, let's wait and see. Fang Mo just smiled and did not say anything more. When I entered the Siriti, I saw another group of intruders. I suspect their arrival is related to the Reaper who stole from me. There must be some plot going on, maybe that guy will show up eventually. What? There's another group of intruders. Komamura Seijin was surprised. He had initially heard about disturbances near the White Path Gate and had gone to investigate, but by the time he arrived, Ichimaru-jin had already sent Ichigo Kurosaki flying, so he hadn't seen any other intruders. So it seems. Komamura Seijin's brows furrowed unconsciously, things seem to be getting more complicated. It's fine, I'm invincible, Fang Mo said unconcernedly, even patting Komamura Seijin on the shoulder, even if things really go south, I can handle it. I can take them apart with my left and right hands, seriously. If you really tear this place apart, then that will be the real problem. Hearing this, Komamura Seijin put his hand to his forehead, clearly exasperated, can't we think of a normal solution? Chapter 190, Steve Chapter 189. Facing his close friend and benefactor, Komamura Seijin really couldn't come up with any good solutions. After serious consideration, Komamura Seijin decided to first introduce Fang Mo to his other friend, Tosen Kaname. Yes, Tosen Kaname is also a captain-level Shinigami, and they get along very well, both being aligned with justice. Because Tosen is blind, he wouldn't mind that Komamura is a non-human Shinigami. They've been close friends for a long time. Komamura thought that if there really is a Shinigami hiding in the Seireidii and stealing things that don't belong here, while also deliberately attracting other disasters to invade, then he must be plotting something. He plans to investigate this matter with Tosen. After all, it is also a way to protect the Seireidii, and it is a just act. He believes that Tosen will agree to it. Thinking of this, Komamura said to Fang Mo seriously, "I want to introduce a friend to you. He is the captain of Squad 9, Tosen can name. I plan to investigate the matter you mentioned with him." After hearing this, Fang Mo looked at Komamura incredulously, and after holding back for a while, he finally said one word, 6. "It's Squad 9, not Squad 6, Komamura clarified, thinking Fang Mo had heard wrong. "The captain of Squad 6 is Byakuya Kokaki, he comes from a noble family in Seoul society, I'm not very familiar with him." "What I meant by 6 was not that," Fang Mo wanted to explain but gave up. Never mind, you probably won't understand. If you want to call him over, go ahead. But don't mention other matters to him until he arrives. I also want to discuss hand-chopping techniques with Captain Tosen." "Hand-chopping techniques?" Komamura was somewhat puzzled. Tosen has always used his Zanpakuto. "Have you met him before?" "I know him, but he doesn't know me," Fang Mo shrugged. "You've known Captain Tosen for so long and you didn't know he could use hand chops? When he attacked with a hand chop? What are you talking about?" Komamura, simply a large Shiba Inu and being in the Seireidii, was far from being as sharp-witted as Nick Fury. He felt that what Fang Mo said was very strange, and he couldn't understand it. "No worries, you'll get used to it eventually," Fang Mo said, patting Komamura on the shoulder. "All right," Komamura didn't overthink it. "I have to handle various tasks in the squad, so I won't have much time to chat." "Oh, that's fine," Fang Mo waved his hand dismissively. "Aren't you a disaster?" Komamura asked, "What if you're discovered? And Captain Shunsui will definitely report this matter." "Then just say you couldn't catch me," said Fang Mo. "Will you come back?" asked Komamura. "I probably won't be able to bring Tosen here until tomorrow." "I'll come back tomorrow morning," Fang Mo said, "don't worry about me, I'm just going out for a stroll. If anyone causes trouble, I'll just kill them." "Don't kill anyone," Komamura quickly requested. "If you kill a Shinigami, it will escalate the situation. Please consider this for my sake." "So what should I do?" asked Fang Mo. "Just knock them out, or whatever," Komamura thought, "as long as you don't kill them, do what you want." "Oh." Fang Mo suddenly looked happy. "Hey, you said it, bro." Komamura Sagen suddenly had a bad feeling, but since he had already spoken, there was no turning back. All he could do was silently pray that Fang Mo wouldn't cause any trouble. After some uneasy reminders, Komamura had to leave for official matters. As for Fang Mo, what kind of trouble do you think he'll get into? The answer is no. What could a square person like him possibly have in mind? At most, he'd dig a basement and conduct some harmless experiments. Like biological entities. Or real-world tests of condensed-state neutron swords. After Komamura left, Fang Mo also left his barracks and began wandering around Seireidii. It must be said. This place was many times larger than Konoha village in the anime. According to the setting, Seireidii has an area of about 130,000 square spiritual miles, and it would take around 40 days to walk around it. Even with Fang Mo's current capabilities, he couldn't conquer Seireidii. Unless he uses some powerful forces. After all, Surtur's sword easily destroyed Asgard, and Seireidii can't be much larger than that. Fang Mo did see several landmark buildings. Like the Penance Palace where Rukia Kokaki was imprisoned. And the nearby double execution platform. Each team's barracks had different decoration styles, which was interesting. Even while wandering, Fang Mo didn't forget his purpose. As he walked, he kept touching things, hoping to unlock some modules. When he reached the vicinity of Squad 6, a system prompt actually rang in his mind. System prompt, new module feature detected, research to acquire download permissions. Hey! Fang Mo was stunned. He was perplexed that simply touching a stone lantern could unlock a module. Maybe it's a lighting optimization module? Despite his confusion, he began to study the stone lantern carefully. It had a strong Japanese aesthetic, and he didn't know how to research it. So he just rubbed it continuously as if cracking walnuts. After a while, another system prompt rang. System prompt, Stone Lantern Style Research, you've gained 10% new module download permission. Hey, only 10%. Fang Mo began to touch other things. Another prompt appears when he touches a tile. System prompt, Tile Style Research, you've gained 10% new module download permission. Tiles, lanterns. Fang Mo pondered, this doesn't sound like an industrial or magical module, it should be a decorative one. With this hypothesis, Fang Mo started consciously touching decorative items. And just like that, another system prompt rang. System prompt, Sliding Door Style Research, you've gained 10% new module download permission. I get it. After confirming his hypothesis, Fang Mo's hands became busier. His boldness knew no bounds. He touched everything, from tatami mats to statues, offering plates, tea tables, beams, and wind chimes. He quickly reached 90% module unlocking. However, he found he couldn't proceed further, almost dismantling someone's barracks in the process. This drew suspicion, specifically from a bald combat maniac from Squad 11. Fortunately, Fang Mo easily knocked him out. As it grew dark and after being noticed, Fang Mo decided to pause his quest. If all else fails, he'd continue during Ichigo Kurosaka's invasion. With this thought, he found a secluded corner. Summoned Steve, and dug himself a luxurious basement. After that, he joyously began to decorate it with furniture like beds, glowstones, carpets, and then took an ender sword from Steve. An ender sword that seals the Snow Queen. Chapter 191 Steve Chapter 190. This chapter is sponsored by Mendasius the Trickster. Everyone, please thank him in the comment. Actually, upon closer thought, Fang Mo has awakened his stan Steve for quite some time now. As for the materialization of Minecraft items into reality, he has mostly mastered the general rules by now. Of course, this has been mentioned before, items like torches, milk, wooden doors, and glowstones that already exist in reality lose their Minecraft properties. Yes, the glowstone that Fang Mo placed in his basement doesn't glow permanently. The light it emits is actually quite weak, not as exaggerated as in the game, and without UV light, it dims over time, completely in accordance with the laws of reality. However, it's worth noting that even if these items have lost their Minecraft characteristics, their quality remains quite high. Foods and drinks are incredibly delicious, and as for gems and such, they are world-class. The emeralds that spray out from villagers become flawless natural emeralds in the real world. But due to mod limitations, Fang Mo has never tried to materialize living entities. For example, in his hands is an Ender Greatsword, where Steve has specifically sealed the Snow Queen. Actually, Fang Mo has more than once teased this character in the game. For instance, he would sit in a boat and use the Ender Bow to shoot at her. Then the Snow Queen would obediently sit in the boat. It's similar to the way he messes with the Gaia boss in Plant Magic. Materialization, hey! Looking at the Snow Queen's sword in his hands, Fang Mo subconsciously rubbed his hands together. He has set up everything now, just waiting for the world rules to conjure a little cutie for him. At this point, there's no reason to hesitate. Fang Mo thought for a moment, and directly released the Snow Queen from the Ender Greatsword. Different from the materialization of ordinary items, Fang Mo vaguely saw a humanoid creature enveloped in white light. The temperature in the basement instantly dropped to freezing, and water vapor solidified, covering the walls in a thick layer of white frost. Soon after, the white light gradually faded. In front of Fang Mo appeared a queen with a commanding presence. She's about 1.7 meters tall, dressed quite lightly, with a bright silver thorny crown on her head. Her aqua-blue wavy long hair looks both fluffy and soft. There's no warmth in her wine-red eyes, and she's staring intently at Fang Mo while slightly pursing her lips. Fang Mo, of course, isn't sure what her situation is either. Considering she might retaliate, Fang Mo also drew his Orichalcum broadsword. However, before Fang Mo could say anything, the Snow Queen suddenly knelt down and said, "I await your command, Master." Hey! Seeing this, Fang Mo was stunned. Actually, before conducting the Minecraft entity materialization experiment, he had considered various possibilities. Including ones where the entity resists him upon materialization, or can't materialize at all, or becomes intellectually impaired because it doesn't have a soul. He had also thought of a situation where the entity immediately submits to him. But now that this really happened, he's a bit uneasy. Could she be pretending to submit while harboring her own agenda? After all, Fang Mo doesn't understand how the world rules define Minecraft creatures. As for the settings, that's easy to explain. Her game setting is that of the Snow Queen, with the creature model. The world rules then beautified her into a humanoid creature, and also granted her the ability to control ice and snow in reality. But what about the other party's soul? Or should I say, memory? Will that also be realized? Will the other party retain their memories from the MC world? If so, what are their memories and personality like? What is the principle underlying the realization of these things? To be honest, Fang Mo is really interested in this aspect. Anyway, no matter how you think about it, the Snow Queen can't possibly be stronger than me. Fang Mo has the arcane ring, which counters her attributes, and to be on the safe side, he will definitely test her thoroughly. What's your name? After thinking about it, Fang Mo decided to start with the basics. I don't have a name, Master. The other party lowered their head and answered in a calm and gentle voice, or you could say, Snow Queen is my name. Oh, I see. Fang Mo asked, do you still have memories from before? What are you referring to, Master? The Snow Queen asked, my memories from that world. Something like that. Fang Mo nodded and said, in short, tell me everything you know, everything in your memory, including your opinions on here, the previous world, and me. Don't leave anything out. Actually. The Snow Queen hesitated slightly and then said with some reluctance, I don't have much impression of the previous world. Oh. I don't remember clearly. The Snow Queen lowered her head and said, all I vaguely remember is that I seem to have been in that forest for a long time. I wanted to rule everything there, so I covered the entire forest with magic and built a castle made of auroras on the glacier to isolate any external threats. But when I arrived in that forest, why I wanted to rule everything, and how long I stayed in that castle, I can't remember at all. The last thing in my memory was seeing you, Master. As the Snow Queen said this, her head seemed to lower even further. In my confused state, I wanted to attack you, but the next moment everything went dark. When I woke up, I found myself here. Once here, my mind became exceptionally clear, as if the millennia of chaos in my mind had finally been dispelled. My soul tells me that you are the only god in that world, and your preferences override any truth. Me, or anything else in that forest, our sole purpose is to serve you, to please you. You are a noble deity, everything in that world exists due to your will. Upon saying this, the Snow Queen prostrated herself on the ground, Master, I am willing to offer you my loyalty, my power, everything I have, until the end of time. Ah, this. After listening to the Snow Queen's words, Fang Mo was also stunned. To be honest, this is the first time someone has fawned over him like this. It feels surprisingly good. However, enjoyment aside, he still needs to rigorously test what needs to be tested, otherwise, if things go wrong, he'll be the one to suffer. So you say you're willing to offer everything to me? After some thought, Fang Mo began to probe the Snow Queen directly. Yes, Master. The Snow Queen nodded without hesitation. Alright then, Fang Mo threw the Ender Sword on the ground, I've been lacking some entertainment lately. In that world, it's always me killing you. Now that you've come to your senses, how about you perform a suicide right here for me? Hearing Fang Mo's words, the Snow Queen's shoulders trembled slightly. She fell silent for a few seconds before slowly picking up the Ender Sword from the ground. If my life can please my master. The Snow Queen took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and without hesitation, thrust the sword forcefully into her own chest. The sword pierced through, and its dark green blade protruded from her back. Master, are you pleased? After piercing her heart, the Snow Queen looked up at Fang Mo with expectation. However, the next second she coughed up blood, the light in her eyes rapidly dimming, and she collapsed to the ground. Seeing this, Fang Mo felt somewhat uncomfortable. He quickly pulled the Ender Sword out of her chest and threw out both a regenerative potion and an instant healing potion. It's got to be said, the potions in this Minecraft world really are top-notch. The Snow Queen's heart had been pierced, her pulse and breathing had surely stopped, and she had lost all consciousness. By any normal standards, she should be dead, but in Minecraft, the criteria seemed to be the brain, not the heart. As long as the brain hadn't completely died, even the most severe injuries could be healed by these potions. Very quickly, the gruesome wound on the Snow Queen's chest healed, leaving not even a scar behind, only a hole in her clothing. After her injuries had healed, the Snow Queen soon regained consciousness. However, when she woke up and realized she wasn't dead, she first looked puzzled, then became anxious. She instinctively ran toward the Ender Sword lying not far away, ready to commit suicide again. Seeing this, Fang Mo quickly used a gravitational field to restrain her. "Master, I failed to please you," the Snow Queen said anxiously, lowering her head. "Please give me another chance, this time I'll aim for my head." "No need, you've already died once," Fang Mo waved his hand, and the Ender Sword flew out of the Snow Queen's grip and stuck into a wall not far away. "You died quite thoroughly, I just revived you, that's all." "Hey!" The Snow Queen was puzzled. "Anyway, you don't have to die now," Fang Mo waved his hand and said, "the loyalty test is over. Don't kill yourself. After all, you are the Snow Queen. I can't really take advantage of the situation, you know." "What?" The Snow Queen stared with wide eyes, clearly not understanding. "All right, let's start by giving you a name." Fang Mo didn't bother explaining and directly said, "I can't keep calling you the Snow Queen, how about I call you Xiao Bing, Little Ice, from now on, how does that sound?" The Snow Queen looked confused, still not quite understanding the current situation. "How about Xiao Shuet, Little Snow?" Seeing the Snow Queen not speaking, Fang Mo touched his chin and asked, "Or do you not like either of these names? How about Cerno? If you don't like any of them, I'll just call you Xiao Wang, Little Queen, from now on." The Snow Queen finally couldn't hold back, placing her hand on her forehead and saying, "Master, just call me Xiao Shuet." Chapter 192, Steve Chapter 191. This chapter is sponsored by Mendasius the Trickster. Everyone, please thank him in the comment. Because of the Snow Queen, Fang Mo hardly slept that night. After some discussion, Fang Mo decided to name her Xiao Shuet, Little Snow, or something like Ah Shuet. After a night of testing, many of Fang Mo's questions were answered, such as how the Snow Queen views the many similar creatures in the Twilight Forest. To this, the Snow Queen's answer was surprisingly calm. According to her, there are indeed many similar creatures in the forest, but they are not the same. They are just competitors with common ambitions. This is a bit like barbecue shops in the real world. When customers are hungry and want kebabs, they open the map and see more than 10 barbecue shops around them. These barbecue shops are quite like the Snow Queen's Aurora Castle. For customers, they just go for the kebabs, and they simply go to the nearest one on the map. For players, it's the same with the Aurora Castles. They open the map, go to the nearest one, loot it, and kill everything inside. According to the Snow Queen, other competitors are merely raining on their own glaciers. She is very calm about Fang Mo killing other Snow Queens. She said that if their deaths can please the only god in the world, Fang Mo, then it's a good thing because that's their only purpose in life. Of course, if there are other ways to please the god, she would be very willing to serve. At this point, Fang Mo wouldn't act hesitantly. Who isn't experienced nowadays? In his past life, when Fang Mo went for a bath, he would often go upstairs for a foot bath and kidney maintenance. He knew what to do and understood everything. There was no need to be reserved now. But how to say this? Fang Mo was actually quite unhappy that night. Even though the Snow Queen is indeed very innocent and naive, very cute and also very charming, she feels as cold as a can of Sprite. This is not an exaggeration. Even if Fang Mo touched her heart, her blood was freezing cold. Holding the Snow Queen felt like holding a block of ice. Who could stand that? The Snow Queen's constitution seems extremely cold. Even hot baths don't help. She wouldn't warm up. Instead, the cold air from her body would freeze the bathtub, and then she would have to be chipped out of the tub. "I'm sorry, Master." The Snow Queen felt extremely guilty and said with a downcast face, "Perhaps I am not good at this. Please punish me." "Forget it, it's not your fault." Fang Mo wiped his face and wrapped himself in a small blanket. "I truly admire that foreigner who dared to fuck a snowman when drunk. How did she manage to do that? Now, I just want to wrestle with Sir Tour in Muspelheim." Foreigner fuck a snowman, real video. Sighing deeply, Fang Mo continued, "When will this feminine module be unlocked? Should I sprinkle some transformation powder on you and see if I can turn you into the Flame Queen?" "If you wish, Master." The Snow Queen didn't mind and nodded in agreement. "It probably won't work, but let's try." After hearing the Snow Queen's words, Fang Mo sat up from the bed. With a thought, Steve handed him a bag of transformation powder. This item also comes from the Twilight Forest module. It's obtained from a loot box. In the game, its function is simple, to convert Twilight creatures into vanilla creatures. For example, turning a ghost into a blaze, a red-cap goblin into a villager, or a forest druid into a witch. Of course, it can also turn a wild boar into a pig, a deer into a cow, and so on. In the game, the transformation powder can't be used on bosses. But after all, this is the real world. Who knows what might happen? What if it works? Fang Mo decided to give it a try. A white light flashed, and he had a small burlap bag in his hand filled with a fine blue powder. Come, lean your head forward. Fang Mo beckoned the distant Snow Queen. She obeyed, walking over and then kneeling obediently in front of Fang Mo, extending her head towards him. Fang Mo pinched some powder from the bag and sprinkled it forward. As the powder dispersed in the air, an indescribable ancient power began to erode reality. The Snow Queen's body lit up briefly, then the light disappeared, and she seemed unchanged. Seeing this, Fang Mo poured the entire bag of powder over her head. A burst of magic erupted, and the Snow Queen was engulfed in a bright light. When the light faded, Fang Mo saw that the Snow Queen had completely changed her appearance. Her long ice blue hair, golden circular eyes, a thick white scarf around her neck, and a garment that looked somewhat like a Japanese kimono. Her features remained the same, but she looked younger and shorter. Previously, she exuded a strong presence, but now she seemed like a cute and beautiful young girl. However, every time she breathed, she still exuded a cold chill. Fang Mo, in disbelief, felt her temperature and found it as cold as before. You must be related to the Blizzard people, Fang Mo said with a sigh. Next time, when I assemble a computer, I'll have you sit on the CPU. Isn't that more effective than liquid helium cooling? The guys from Tuladin would be so envious. I got a humanoid cooling tower for free. I'm sorry, Master, the Snow Queen said, lowering her head in remorse. I couldn't become what you wanted. I told you, it's not your fault, Fang Mo replied, patting her head, which felt surprisingly better after the transformation. Let's leave it at that for now. I'll try something else. With that, he got up from the bed. With a thought, Steve took out a grey spawn egg from his backpack. Yes, it was a bedrock golem spawn egg. Since the Snow Queen claimed to be a deity of the Minecraft world, he guessed that the golem, when brought to reality, would listen to him too. This wasn't just any mob. It was an item from creative mode, made of bedrock. It's a creature that even the universe sword couldn't harm. Apart from a few one-shot modules, the only way to defeat it was to throw it into the void. With these thoughts, Fang Mo took the spawn egg from Steve. Reality ensued, and the egg became heavy in Fang Mo's hand. Without hesitation, he threw the lead grey spawn egg onto the ground. A second later, a vast amount of grey-black void particles fogged up. Then, a 3-meter-tall bedrock golem slowly emerged. Chapter 193, Steve Chapter 192. After the appearance of the bedrock golem, the lead grey void particle mist slowly disappeared. When it materialized, this bedrock golem looked quite impressive. Unlike the rigid, singular block structure in the game, the current bedrock golem is closer to a humanoid form, its entire body made up of irregular lead grey stones. Because of this, the bedrock golem looked particularly robust and strong. Due to the irregular composition of its rocky surface, it appeared especially rugged and ferocious, especially its fists, which seemed disproportionately large, even larger than its head by several rounds. Speaking of its head, its face is also made purely of stone. A few cracks outlined something resembling facial features. Its eyes radiated a faint white light, giving it a commanding presence. To put it simply, it looked like the Earthshaker from Dota. Plus a fusion version of the Molten Giant from LOL. It does look pretty cool. Fang Mo observed the bedrock golem for a moment, equally pleased with its appearance, and then nodded, asking, "Hey, can you speak?" The bedrock golem looked down at Fang Mo. It tilted its head, seeming a bit puzzled, then reached up to scratch its own head. The sound of stone scraping was very grating, and it even scraped out some sparks from the back of its head. Seeing this, for some reason, Fang Mo had a bad feeling. Is this thing's brain also made of bedrock? Hey! Thinking about this, Fang Mo became a bit concerned and quickly asked, "You're my golem, right? Do you obey me?" The bedrock golem thought for a moment, then slowly nodded. "That's good." Fang Mo nodded, at least the golem was obedient, so he continued to ask, "Let me test you. Do you know what 1 plus 1 equals?" The bedrock golem was instantly puzzled. Seeing this, Fang Mo's sense of foreboding grew even stronger. He then held up his fingers and began to explain, "Look, this is one finger, and another finger plus this finger equals how many fingers?" The bedrock golem looked down and began to count its own fingers. However, after a while, it still seemed to not understand and looked up at Fang Mo with a bewildered expression. Fang Mo covered his face in disbelief. "Good news, the invincible bedrock golem has finally arrived. Bad news, it's a bit dumb. Master, I think it doesn't understand." The Snow Queen, who had been watching, couldn't help but remind, "It's just a self-aware golem, without that high of intelligence. You should let it do the tasks suited for golems." "What tasks do I have for a golem?" Fang Mo said with a bit of a headache, "We're not fighting now. If I need a massage or something, you can do it. This thing is totally useless." The bedrock golem, upon hearing this, anxiously took a step forward. It seemed to want to prove something, and gestured wildly at Fang Mo. In the end, it pounded its chest loudly, causing sparks to scatter everywhere. "Ah shwet!" Fang Mo turned to the Snow Queen and asked, "Do you understand what it's trying to say?" "I'm sorry, Master," the Snow Queen replied, bowing her head in shame. "I really don't understand." "That's problematic." Fang Mo rubbed his temples, slightly exasperated. He glanced at the bedrock golem. "Why don't you just be my punching bag? Let me test out some of my skills on you." The bedrock golem eagerly nodded, thumping its chest in affirmation. Without further ado, Fang Mo threw a punch directly at its chest. The impact resonated loudly, shaking the vast underground space. The ground around the golem began to crack and spread, with countless rocks falling from the ceiling. Yet, the golem stood still, even scratching its head in confusion. Feels good," said Fang Mo, nodding in satisfaction after his punch. With a mere thought, he stabilized the collapsing space using his gravitational powers. Nowadays, Fang Mo's strength was incomparable to the past. There was a time when even fighting a single monster was challenging for him. Now, even Captain Marvel might not withstand his prowess, not to mention the various divine artifacts he possessed. His raw physical power alone could create a massive hole in a spaceship. Yet, his punch didn't even make the bedrock golem budge. Truly a puppet made of bedrock, not the brightest, but incredibly tough. Let's try this." Fang Mo thought for a moment and then threw another punch. This time, he activated his void ring, causing space around his fist to warp and distort, transforming his fist into a pitch-black sphere. He launched his punch with enough force to tear anything apart, aiming directly at the bedrock golem. But even the overwhelming gravitational field seemed ineffective against the golem, which stood its ground without a scratch. "Damn, you're pretty impressive," Fang Mo remarked, clearly pleased by the golem's resilience. "Next time we visit the Marvel Universe, I'll just shove the Power Stone into your mouth. Wouldn't that be more efficient than a glove?" The bedrock golem tilted its head, indicating its confusion. "You really don't seem very bright," sighed Fang Mo. "You can't even serve as a comic relief. At most, you can be a laborer." "Master, do you want to give it a name?" the Snow Queen suggested from a distance. "Oh, right." This reminded Fang Mo. He nodded subconsciously and looked at the bedrock golem. "Since you're a bedrock golem, let's call you Xiaoji." The golem hesitated for a moment. Even though it didn't understand, it instinctively felt that the name wasn't great. It shook its head vigorously and slapped the floor in protest. "You guys are so annoying," Fang Mo grumbled. "Can't use this name or that name. Don't you know I'm terrible at naming? What do you want to be called then? GG Monster? Rock King? Or the Wise Malphite?" This reminded Fang Mo, who subconsciously nodded in agreement. He then looked at the bedrock puppet and said, "Since you are a bedrock puppet, let's call you Little Base." The bedrock puppet seemed momentarily confused. Even though it didn't understand, it instinctively felt the name wasn't quite right. So, it hurriedly shook its head and even slapped the floor hard in protest. "Ugh, you guys are so annoying. This name's not okay," that name's not okay either. Don't you know I'm terrible at naming? Fang Mo couldn't help but say, so what do you want to be called? GG Monster? Rock Lord? Or the Brilliant Malphite? Upon hearing this, the golem made some hand gestures. Can't you write? Why do you need to gesture to me? Seeing this, Fang Mo face-palmed, even the localization mod didn't translate your language. What does that tell you? Maybe even it doesn't understand your gestures, okay. The golem, appearing anxious, scratched its head, sparking some embers. It then suddenly raised its hand, pointing up with 3 rugged stone fingers, and then pointed to its own head, shaking and nodding as if pretending to be smart. Oh, so you want to be the smart one. This time, Fang Mo understood and laughed, so from now on, I should call you Malphite. Upon hearing this, the golem immediately nodded in agreement. Alright then. Fang Mo smiled and patted the golem's chest, you do act pretty smart, sharing half a brain with all the Malphites worldwide seems appropriate. The golem, or Malphite, didn't seem to mind this comment. It even looked a bit pleased. But somehow, just standing there happily, it exuded a certain, dim-witted aura. Sigh. Seeing the golem's behavior, all Fang Mo could do was facepalm and sigh deeply. By now, he had brought 2 MC creatures to life, but was somewhat dissatisfied with both. The Snow Queen was great in all other aspects, except for her extremely low body temperature, which made her more of a decorative piece. And the golem? Its brain was made of rock. Negative IQ levels, truly something. After these tests, Fang Mo didn't want to bring any more MC creatures to life for a while. So, he shifted his focus to items. Thanks to unlocking many new mods, he had various new items he wanted to try out in reality. Like the previous Twilight transformation powder. It changed the imposing Snow Queen into a cute Japanese-styled girl. To be honest, Fang Mo didn't quite understand the mechanics. It's a transformation powder, not a powder to make someone younger. Why did she change like that? Although he wanted to continue testing, considering that making the Snow Queen any younger would be a problem, Fang Mo decided against it. He would test it on other characters instead. So, he set the transformation powder aside and checked Steve's backpack, pulling out a ring. This was a ring he obtained from a multi-draw called the Crimson Ring. Its effect was simple, gradually restore health when worn. Theoretically, it's similar to the terra firma trait of the Tinker's Construct Emerald. Fang Mo felt it might be more convenient to wear the ring himself than to let Steve have it. In the future, when treating others, he could combine the ring and the emerald stick. Their combined healing power, alongside the beacon's energy inside Fang Mo, could potentially save on regeneration potions. With this thought, Fang Mo summoned the ring from Steve. A flash of light, and the real-world transformation was complete. In Fang Mo's hand was a crimson ring. But before he could examine it, a loud bell toll sounded from outside. Instinctively checking his mini-map, Fang Mo saw a large number of Shinigami's gathering, moving directly overhead. Recalling the current time, Fang Mo instantly realized what was happening outside. Chapter 194, Steve Chapter 193. Fang Mo entered Siridii yesterday. Near the White Path Gate, he saw the main group wanting to enter the Siridii. It was that kid Ichigo Kurosaki. The gatekeeper Jidanbo even opened the door for them. Sadly, Jin Ichimaru stabbed, and they were sent flying out. However, their purpose of breaking into Siridii was to save their teammates. Rukia Kukaki seemed to be on the verge of execution, so they wouldn't easily give up. They spent the whole of yesterday looking for other ways. Thanks to Yoryuki, the insider, they found another way. The method was simple and direct. Since they couldn't get through the main entrance, they decided to fly over. So, they found a pyrotechnician and packed themselves into a cannon. They combined their spiritual energies into a spherical shield that acted like a cannonball. With a burst of fire, they were shot directly into Siridii. There's actually a semi-transparent barrier in midair around Siridii. But this barrier isn't as tough as a Sirihiki, so they managed to squeeze into Siridii. Unfortunately, Ichigo Kurosaki's spiritual power was too immense. He couldn't sync with the others, and their energy ball exploded before it landed, scattering everyone. The bell sound Fang Mo heard was a warning signal in the Soul Society, alerting the Shinigami that intruders had entered Siridii and to prepare for them. Since the main plot had begun, Fang Mo couldn't continue hiding underground studying MC items. The items could be studied anytime, but if he missed the main event, it would be gone. So, he had Steve fill the basement. For himself, he pulled out 2 ender swords. Come, sit on it and move yourself. Fang Mo threw one to the Ice Queen. I won't be able to take you with me for the next part, so you should stay in the sword for a while. Okay, I understand, Master. The Ice Queen, being a magician with a high IQ, quickly understood. She turned into a streak of light and entered the Ender Sword. The sword's appearance changed because it now housed the Ice Queen. The blade became slender, and the dark green metal turned to an icy blue. Nice, another artifact, Fang Mo mumbled, picking up the icy blade. What should I call you? Frost's Sorrow? Magic Sword Rahab? Or maybe Sweet Iron Rail in the northeast winter? He felt a slight tremor from the sword, presumably the Ice Queen's weak protest. Okay, we'll decide later. He stored the icy sword in his inventory and then looked at a bedrock puppet. Listen, get in. Fang Mo pointed the Ender Sword at the puppet. Surprisingly, the puppet complied without resistance and was absorbed into the Ender Sword, which then transformed to look like a primitive stone sword. This has some properties of bedrock, Fang Mo noted. He remembered another sword in Steve's bag. I should have added an Endrium core to that one. Sighing, he stored the heavy sword and said, it's still not too late. I can adjust it next time I'm back. After stuffing the 2 summons into the storage space, Steve had also filled the large underground space on his side. Thus, without any further delay, Fang Mo directed Steve to dig open the blocked entrance and walked out of the basement. However, just as he stepped out, Fang Mo saw an orange-haired hedgehog-like head running towards him from a distance. Naturally, the figure also spotted Fang Mo and immediately halted, instinctively drawing his Zanpakuto from his back. This orange-haired hedgehog was none other than Ichigo Kurosaki. Having been separated from his teammates, Ichigo was planning to charge towards the Repentance Palace on his own. But from the bushes emerged a Shinigami, and sensing potential danger, he prepared for combat. But in the next moment, Ichigo recognized Fang Mo. Wait, is it you? Ichigo exclaimed with some surprise, you were the one at the White Gate. Yo, isn't this our chicken bone? Fang Mo wasn't particularly surprised. Having already traversed 4 different worlds, he had grown accustomed to such encounters. He even greeted Ichigo with a smile, looks like you've made it in. By the way, where's your Yuaki? Hey. Ichigo paused, taken aback, you know me. Sort of, Fang Mo replied, you haven't answered my question. Isn't your Yuaki with you? I got separated from my companions, Ichigo quickly replied, I don't know where Mr. Yuaki is. But who are you? I don't seem to recall meeting you. Why do you know me? Oh, Urahara Kisuk told me, Fang Mo lied effortlessly, that scoundrel owes me money. He said he left something valuable in the Soul Society as collateral and told me to find it myself. Hey. Ichigo seemed momentarily confused, but being the typical hot-blooded protagonist, he soon accepted Fang Mo's explanation, so you're a friend of shopkeeper Urahara? But you're wearing Shinigami attire. Are you a Shinigami? No, I'm a Soul Reaper, Fang Mo replied with a smirk. Ichigo was again left dumbfounded. However, before he could speak further, hurried footsteps echoed from behind. Ichigo's expression changed, and he sheathed his Zanpakuto and ran forward. Not long after Ichigo fled, a group of Shinigami rushed in. Are you looking for a Ryoka? Seeing this, Fang Mo casually pointed in the direction Ichigo had fled. He went that way, saying something about going to the Repentance Palace to save someone. Oh, thanks. The group of Shinigami quickly headed in the direction Fang Mo pointed. But after a few steps, the leader halted, turning to Fang Mo with a suspicious look. Wait. You look unfamiliar. Which division do you belong to? Fang Mo's eyebrows raised slightly, releasing an intimidating aura, like a vast abyss. It felt as if the ground, bricks, and everything made of spirit particles trembled in fear, as though they would be crushed any moment. However, this aura lasted only a moment, disappearing just as the Shinigami were about to faint, as if the terrifying scene had been an illusion. Sorry. The leading Shinigami stepped back, his face pale. I just remembered, I still need to capture that Ryoka. Without looking back, he fled, with the other Shinigami, cold sweat dripping, following suit. Mr. Kieda, he. Shut up. Do you want us all to die here? Their faint conversation faded as they distanced themselves. Fang Mo chuckled, not bothering further. Following the path from the previous day, he soon arrived in front of the 7th Division's barracks. The Godi 13 was busy dealing with the Ryoka invasion. The captains were still in place, but their subordinates were running around. They had to follow the orders of the head captain to capture the Ryoka and not let the Soul Society be disgraced. As a result, there weren't many people in the 7th Division's barracks. Walking with swagger, Fang Mo entered and immediately noticed Komamura Seijin sitting quietly in the main hall, along with a dark-skinned man beside him, sporting an eye patch and twisted dreadlocks. Yo, Chai, I'm here. Upon seeing Komamura, Fang Mo naturally greeted him. He then turned his attention to the dark-skinned man, saying cheerfully, You must be Captain Tosen, right? Are you cosplaying as Illidan? That eye patch looks quite accurate. Komamura, is this the friend you mentioned? Tosen, though confused by what Fang Mo was saying, discerned the mocking tone. He spoke up, he must be that Ryoka from yesterday, right? What were you thinking, sheltering such a Ryoka? As he spoke, Tosen rested his hand on the hilt of his Zanpakuto. To prevent you from making further mistakes, my friend, I will personally handle this Ryoka. But before he could finish, Fang Mo appeared instantly in front of Tosen, pressing a hand on his shoulder, his eyes revealing a peculiar intensity. He, Captain Tosen, let's not be hasty now. Chapter 195, Steve Chapter 194. He, Captain Tosen, don't be in such a hurry. Fang Mo put a hand on Tosen Kaname's shoulder and said with a smile, I'm good friends with Komamura Seijin. How can you treat me as an ordinary intruder? Anyone who trespasses into Siridi is an intruder. Tosen Kaname did not give Fang Mo a friendly look and coldly said, If you surrender willingly and come with me to meet the chief captain, I might spare you for the sake of Komamura. Oh! Hearing Tosen Kaname's words, Fang Mo's smile slightly faded, it seems. Captain Tosen, you want to test me? Let me experience your dark powers. Your allies are wreaking havoc all over Siridi. Tosen Kaname said righteously, For the peace of Siridi, whether it's you or your allies, I will eliminate you all. Tosen, don't be impulsive. Komamura Seijin, hearing this, became a bit anxious, the current intruders have nothing to do with him, let me explain. Perhaps in ordinary times, Tosen Kaname might have listened to Komamura Seijin, but now with Ichigo Kurosaki invading Siridi, which was part of Eisen's planned events, the appearance of Fang Mo was clearly an unforeseen variable. To prevent any potential interference with his superior's plan, Tosen Kaname had no choice, he could not give his old friend any leeway today. Enough talk. Tosen Kaname immediately drew his Zanpakut, cry out, Suzumashi. With that, he initiated his Shikai. Suddenly, there was a buzzing sound, followed by an extremely unpleasant noise that burst beside Fang Mo's ear. It was as if 1,000 nails were scraping a chalkboard simultaneously. Fang Mo immediately felt a strong discomfort. It wasn't the feeling of being attacked, but purely physiological discomfort. In fact, Suzumashi's sonic attack had a hypnotic effect, but unfortunately, Fang Mo's current mental willpower was so strong that even Charles couldn't escape a beating from a small stick, let alone the Shikai of Tosen Kaname. Almost instinctively, Fang Mo kicked forward. Tosen Kaname didn't expect Fang Mo to withstand Suzumashi's sonic attack. Unable to react in time, he was sent flying like a cannonball. He crashed through the walls of Squad 7's barracks, then broke 2 trees and a beam, smashed another wall, and finally rolled on the ground several times before coming to a stop. Tosen. Komamura Seijin became anxious seeing this. However, before he could say anything to stop Fang Mo, Tosen Kaname's voice was heard again. Suzumashi Nishiki. Having just been hit, Tosen Kaname was visibly shaken. A large bloody footprint appeared on his chest, his clothes were torn, and there was a bloodstain on his mouth. However, his momentum seemed to increase, probably due to the surge of spiritual pressure, and then he swung his sword. Benahik. With Tosen Kaname's swing, numerous blade-like objects flew straight towards Fang Mo. Steve's counter, forget it, too weak to bother countering. Upon seeing the situation, Fang Mo initially wanted to use his shield to deflect the attack. However, the damage from these small flying knives was so minimal that he felt too lazy to even defend. He simply stood still and took the attack head-on. Numerous sword blades flew directly towards Fang Mo. Komamura Saijin quickly raised his sword to block them. However, Fang Mo didn't even dodge. All that could be heard was a clattering sound, and all those sword blades were snapped in half, scattering everywhere. As for Fang Mo, he just boldly faced the incoming blades and casually walked towards Tosen Kaname. What? Seeing his attack was ineffective, Tosen Kaname was quite surprised. You. But before he could finish speaking, Fang Mo raised his hand. Heavenly pull. A massive gravitational pull appeared instantly, and Tosen Kaname's body uncontrollably flew forward. Of course, during this, he tried to use quick steps or other means to escape. But the force was so powerful it was almost ridiculous. Realizing he couldn't escape, Tosen Kaname quickly raised his hand. Keto number 45, Waste Flame. A spherical soul flame shot out directly from Tosen Kaname's hand. What weak nonsense! Seeing Tosen Kaname's technique, Fang Mo disdainfully slapped it away, like swatting a fly. The purple-white light ball hit a tree within the 7th Division's courtyard, instantly burning the entire tree to ashes. What? Seeing this, Tosen Kaname was stunned. The next moment, Fang Mo grabbed him by the neck with one hand. Do you realize your mistake? Fang Mo smiled, looking at Tosen Kaname in his grip. With his other hand, he materialized a moonlight worm queen from Steve's hand, aiming it at Tosen Kaname as if he was holding a water gun. Come on, activate your racial talent, raise your hands. Do you think I'll submit to you? Tosen Kaname spat out blood but still spoke defiantly. Oh, all right. Fang Mo squeezed the moonlight worm queen, its round belly suddenly contracted, and with a plop sound, it spewed out a substance that looked like a booger directly onto Tosen Kaname's face. Then, the substance burst open with a pop, and the sticky moonlight worms crawled out from inside. They crawled on Tosen Kaname's face, glowing. Do you realize your mistake? Fang Mo, holding the moonlight worm queen, continued to ask Tosen Kaname. You're as weird and disgusting. Tosen Kaname struggled, but Fang Mo's strength was immense, making it impossible for him to break free. So, Fang Mo continued squeezing the moonlight worm queen. There was a continuous sound of popping. On Tosen Kaname's face, hair, and neck, there were many glowing maggots crawling. Ah! Tosen Kaname couldn't help but exclaim, Bankai! Suzumashi Suishiki, in Makrogi! With a surge of spiritual pressure, a massive black cloak instantly enveloped both Fang Mo and Tosen Kaname. Seeing this, Fang Mo smiled slightly, deliberately releasing Tosen Kaname's hand, who quickly used a flash step to retreat. It seemed that he had finally escaped from Fang Mo's grasp. Tosen Kaname breathed a sigh of relief, and his confidence slowly returned. He glanced at Fang Mo in front of him, then brandished his sword and said, I didn't expect a mere Ryoka would force me to use my Bankai. But you should be proud, this is a power only captain-level Shinigami possess. You, as a Ryoka, might not be able to imagine, right? After all, you can't see anything now. This is the ability of my Bankai. Vision, hearing, smell, taste, your senses will be stripped away one by one. How is it? This black void world is terrifying, right? But no matter what I say now, it's useless, you can't hear it. So, embrace your fear and die. Saying this, Tosen Kaname slowly raised his hand, with a yellow spirit particle gathering in it. Scattered bones of beasts. Spires, red crystals, wheels of steel. The mover is the wind, the still one is the sky. The sound of clashing spears echoes throughout the ghost town. Heido number 63, Rei Koho. With Tosen Kaname's words ending, a fully chanted number 63 Heido flew straight towards Fang Mo. Boom! A huge blaze shot up, raising dust that instantly engulfed Fang Mo. However, just a second later, a sigh from Fang Mo could be heard amidst the smoke. Sigh. As the sigh resounded, the surrounding smoke slowly dispersed, revealing an unharmed Fang Mo. You went through so much trouble to blind me, and I thought you'd have a significant move. But you didn't even harm me a bit. Why do you like to darken the surroundings like dark elves? Do you also like to mock in the dark? But your Bankai blocks one's hearing, so no one can hear your mockery. Isn't that sick? Wait, did you develop this Bankai for theft? Damn! My new cotton jacket. I warn you, you can steal my jacket, but don't you dare steal Xiao Shui's sanitary pads. Seeing Fang Mo's incessant chatter, Tosen Kaname was truly on the verge of losing it. A steel-like ability, hey! Tosen Kaname slowly raised his Zanpakuto, gripping the hilt with both hands, trying his best to ignore Fang Mo's coarse words, and began to gather his spiritual pressure. If that's the case, I'll behead you with one slash. It's well known that many battles in the Shinigami world are determined by spiritual pressure. Eisen once said in the original story that the Battle of Shinigami is a battle of spiritual pressures. The Shikai of the 2nd Division captain, Swafon, was said to kill in 2 strikes. It seemed like a rule-based attack, but it's still about matching spiritual pressures. With Eisen's immense spiritual pressure, Swafon couldn't touch him. Thus, Tosen Kaname was now desperately gathering his spiritual pressure, believing that as long as his spiritual pressure was strong enough, his blade should be able to cut through the opponent's steel skin. But just as Tosen Kaname was focusing on gathering his spiritual pressure, Fang Mo suddenly stopped his ranting and said, "Captain Tosen, you don't think that I really can't see you?" As he spoke, Fang Mo suddenly turned to look at Tosen Kaname. Seeing this, Tosen Kaname was taken aback and quickly stepped back a great distance. He was filled with doubt and disbelief, unable to understand how Fang Mo could see him. Did Fang Mo really see him? Indeed, he did. Such an abnormal state of blindness could be cured by Steve by drinking a bucket of milk outside. However, Tosen Kaname's Bankai maintained this continuous abnormal state, and after drinking the milk, he would go blind again. It was indeed a bit annoying. But don't forget, Fang Mo's perception of the world isn't limited to just the 5 senses. Nowadays, having consumed a large number of essence berries, his precision in controlling gravity has greatly improved. Even without looking or listening, Fang Mo can feel the mass of surrounding objects through something akin to a gravitational sense. With Tosen Kaname standing there, a big figure, it's impossible for Fang Mo not to sense him. Of course, even if he couldn't see him, it wouldn't matter. Because Fang Mo simply didn't bother using individual skills to attack his opponent. "I'll ask you one last time," Fang Mo said, slowly raising both hands. "Do you realize your mistake?" Keto number 70. Tosen Kaname, seemingly oblivious to the danger he was in, began to initiate a spell. "All right then." Fang Mo shrugged, then drew the samurai sword from his waist. "In that case, I guess I'll have to release my Zanpakuto." As he spoke, countless cotton seeds drifted out from Fang Mo's palm. Scatter, 1,000 cottons. Chapter 196, Steve Chapter 195. TL, chill. Scatter, 1,000 cotton. With Fang Mo's words echoing, countless cotton seeds began to quickly take root and sprout. In the blink of an eye, the whole land seemed to be covered as if by pure white snowflakes. Tosen Kaname was stunned upon seeing this, as he didn't feel any spiritual pressure at all. But the next second, he suddenly felt a terrifying force of gravity. He was pressed directly to the ground without any chance to resist, and large amounts of plant roots entangled him, quickly binding him up. As he was subdued, cracks began to appear in the surrounding dark shield. Soon, like shattering glass, the dark space collapsed completely. Fang Mo's senses returned to normal in an instant, and of course, he saw Tosen Kaname lying on the cotton field ahead. "Captain Tosen, your fate is to fall here." Seeing this, Fang Mo began to taunt again, "Admit it, without your Zanpakuto, you can't beat me. This pure white cotton sea will be your final destination. It's not over yet." Tosen Kaname gritted his teeth trying to stand up, but what bound him was no ordinary plant roots, but something generated by the arcane ring, with a power equivalent to a wooden escape technique. Tosen Kaname certainly couldn't stand up, struggling desperately on the ground, showing a helpless and furious look. "How could I lose to a mere Ryoka? I've told you, I'm not a Ryoka." As Fang Mo spoke, he walked up and grabbed the blade of Tosen Kaname's Zanpakuto, forcibly taking it from his hand. "Suzumashi-a." After seizing the Zanpakuto, Fang Mo also fiddled with it a bit. He tried to hand it to Steve. Just like Thor's hammer, this thing could also be stuffed into the inventory, but apart from the name still being Suzumashi, all the suffixes and annotations below were all a bunch of constantly changing garbled text. Fang Mo looked at the Zanpakuto. Then, with a thought, Steve immediately pulled out a name tag. It was a name tag that had been modified by Iron Felt, and the name on it was Grass Mud Horse. This was something Fang Mo had prepared for an alpaca, but unfortunately, he made one too many, so he kept it. Considering the possibility of a name tag existing in reality, Fang Mo did not materialize it but directly lifted Suzumashi and let Steve use the name tag on the Zanpakuto with a right click, accompanied by a burst of particle effects. Fang Mo faintly felt that something about this Zanpakuto seemed different. But if asked to elaborate, Fang Mo couldn't quite put it into words. After all, his power system was not quite the same as that of the Shinigami. Although his soul was extremely strong, he didn't manipulate any spiritual particles or spiritual pressure. While Fang Mo was studying this Zanpakuto, Komamura Seijin, who was not far away, saw that Tosen's Bankai had disappeared and rushed over immediately. Tosen. Fang Mo. Stop fighting. I didn't even hit him. Fang Mo shrugged his shoulders, then continued to lift the Moonlight Worm Queen in his hand and began to spray Tosen again. I'm just playing with him, you see, there's no lethality here, okay? You indeed have no lethality, but it's highly insulting. Komamura Seijin looked at Tosen, who was covered in glowing maggots, and couldn't help but touch his forehead. He then began to persuade Tosen, Tosen, you've seen it. You're not his match. What's more, both of you are good friends of mine. I don't want to see you fighting to the death. Can't we sit down and talk it over? Give me this courtesy. Tosen opened his mouth, seemingly wanting to say something. However, before he could finish speaking, Fang Mo took the initiative to speak. All right. Fang Mo said with a smile, I also really want to have a good talk with Captain Tosen. I believe he should be able to calm down after what just happened. Find us a quiet place, Chai. Shouldn't you untie me first? Upon hearing this, Tosen spoke coldly. Okay. Fang Mo nodded, then waved his hand, and all the plants on the ground withered and died. The restraints on Tosen were lifted, and he immediately tried to stand up. However, the kick from Fang Mo was too strong, and he felt like he had broken several ribs. He coughed up a mouthful of blood from exerting too much force. Oops, I almost broke the good captain. Upon seeing this, Fang Mo chuckled and helped Tosen up, and also handed him a bottle of healing potion. Here, Captain Tosen, heal your wounds first. I'm not drinking your stuff. Tosen turned his head and refused. Give me back my Zanpakuto. Oh, sure. Fang Mo didn't get angry but smiled and handed the Zanpakuto to Tosen. Here, take it. This Zanpakuto has a volatile temper and can curse at people easily. Humph, as if you know my Suzumashi. Tosen said while taking back his Zanpakuto. However, as soon as he got his hands on it, he felt something was wrong and frowned. This is not my Zanpakuto. What are you talking about, Tosen? Komamura Seijin couldn't help but speak. Isn't this your Suzumashi? Is it? Tosen was also a bit stunned. The next second, he swung the Zanpakuto and said, Suzumashi Nishiki, Benahik. The same technique, but at this moment Tosen didn't even shoot out a single blade. Swinging this sword, he swung into emptiness. No. Tosen instantly realized something and almost shouted at Fang Mo, what the hell did you do to my Zanpakuto? Oh, it actually works. Fang Mo was also stunned for a moment, then scratched his head and said with a smile, well, I didn't do much. I just renamed your Zanpakuto. Rename? Tosen frowned, how is that possible? A Zanpakuto is imbued with the soul of a Shinigami, each sword has a name that it's born with, how can you change its name? Oh? Are you sure? Fang Mo chuckled, doesn't Squad Zero have a monk who can rename things? Didn't you know? Upon hearing this, Tosen was also stunned. Other captains might not know about the existence of Squad Zero, but he had already joined Eisen, and Eisen obviously knew about it, so of course he knew too. However, is this traveler related to Squad Zero? Thinking of this, Tosen felt a bit dazed, his momentum suddenly dropped. Then, what did you rename my Zanpakuto? Grass Mud Horse. Fang Mo said loudly. Chapter 197, Steve Chapter 196. I'm asking you the name of my Zanpakut. Hearing Fang Mo's words, Tosen Kaname felt his hand holding the hilt of the sword slightly trembling. I don't want to hear you insulting me. If you really enjoy humiliating me, then No, you're misunderstanding. Fang Mo waved his hand, I didn't mean to insult you. The name of your sword is now those 3 characters. Tosen Kaname remained silent. After a long while, he finally couldn't help but ask, How did you manage to do that? It's just a simple name change. Fang Mo said curiously, is it that hard? Something even the Zero Division can do, why do you think I can't? Change the name of my Zanpakuto back immediately, Tosen Kaname said straight away. Joking aside, if he lost his Zanpakuto, would Eisen even want him as a subordinate? Moreover, the sword holds special significance for Tosen Kaname. It was an heirloom of a close female friend who was brutally killed because she accused her husband of murdering a colleague. The internal handling of the matter in the Siridi greatly dissatisfied him, all because the killer was a noble, so the matter was left unsettled. For this reason, Tosen Kaname felt that justice needed to be vocalized, so he picked up his friend's heirloom, infused it with his own power, and entered Siridi intending to make changes. Unfortunately, the Siridi was already rotten to the core. He found that no matter how hard he tried, it was useless. Hence, he decided to follow Eisen to create a new world, to bring justice to everyone by his own hands. For this goal, he could give up his life, dignity and everything else but this sword. Because it was his only obsession. Yet, such stubbornness was outright denied by Fang Mo. Sorry, I can't. Why? Hearing this, Tosen Kaname became anxious. If you can change the name of my Zanpakuto, then you can definitely change it back. It really can't be done for now. Before Tosen Kaname could finish, Fang Mo directly interrupted him. He didn't lie, after all, he only brought one naming tag. He had a bunch in a box, but he'd have to return to the MC world to get them. Anyway, based on how the Book of Ages behaves, by the time Fang Mo gets another naming tag, Ichigo Kurosaki would probably have already cleared Siridi. What are you trying to do? Hearing that his Zanpakuto could not be restored, Tosen Kaname was somewhat on edge, almost gritting his teeth as he asked. What do I want to do? Fang Mo tilted his head, looked at the angry Tosen Kaname and said cheerfully, I want to be friends with you, Captain Tosen. I will not be friends with a Ryoka. Tosen Kaname yelled. No, you will. Fang Mo smiled, then turned his head to look at Komamura Sagen. The latter nodded, understanding, and turned to walk in a direction. After all, a captain-level battle had just taken place here, and someone would soon arrive, so the priority was to find a quiet place where both could sit down and talk. Relying on Komamura Sagen, the two quickly arrived in a secluded cave. This is where I usually walk my pet dog. Komamura Sagen said, the area is very remote. As long as you and Tosen don't suddenly burst out with spiritual pressure, you should not be discovered by others. Fang Mo silently glanced at Komamura Sagen. Walking the dog like this isn't bad, and it reminds him of Nick Fury far away in the Marvel Universe, who also performed a good show of horse riding. But speaking of which, is Nick Fury still in the void? However, he's already a mature SHIELD director, surely capable of building his own spaceship to return to Earth. If not, he can still contact Captain Marvel, so there's no need to worry about him. Shaking his head, Fang Mo stopped thinking about his other black friend. Instead, he focused all his attention on Tosen Kaname. Captain Tosen, said Fang Mo, controlling Steve to place a stone and some wooden stairs on the ground as a table and chair. What do you think is justice? Justice. Hearing this topic, Tosen Kaname immediately became enthusiastic and spoke without hesitation. Justice is, of course, to judge those evil things. Justice should not be interfered with by any external factors. Fairness is the greatest justice. Oh. Fang Mo was originally trying to trick Tosen Kaname, and seeing the latter take the bait, he showed a faint smile. Care to elaborate? Take you, for instance, a Ryoka. Tosen Kaname had no good feelings for Fang Mo and said coldly, you trespassed into Jinglingting without permission, you are a Ryoka who should be judged. Even if you're a friend of Komamura Sagen, I won't show you mercy. Great. Excellent. Fang Mo suddenly exclaimed with approval, exactly, this is an impartial act of justice. Justice will prevail. This sudden turn of events left Tosen Kaname baffled. Before he could think of what to say, Fang Mo began speaking again. I have seen too many tragedies in this world, too many justices that could not speak up due to the corruption of power, said Fang Mo, sounding righteous. I didn't expect you to be such a righteous person, even if your skin is so dark, cough cough, your heart is as white as snow. You're worthy of being Komamura Sagen's friend. I, Fang Mo, recognize you. I don't think being recognized by a Ryoka is anything to be proud of, Tosen Kaname said coldly. Although it seemed like Fang Mo was praising him, Tosen Kaname felt uncomfortable. Naturally, he wouldn't show Fang Mo a good face. I can tell you must have a painful memory, Fang Mo said deliberately. The strongest will often is born from the most painful past. I know a boy named Lian Ping. Want to hear his story? Once there was a boy who was naturally kind and simple. When he saw injustice on the road, he drew his sword to help. But unfortunately, the wicked person was a powerful noble, manipulating public opinion. Before Tosen Kaname could say anything, Fang Mo continued, initially, he just wanted to save the girl, but she was bribed by the noble to accuse him of being the villain, leading him to be paralyzed and constantly blamed, with his family cruelly murdered one after another. Yet the real evil person roamed free due to his noble status. At that moment, all the warmth he had felt, his conscience, his kindness, and all his thoughts collapsed, leaving only the word revenge in his heart. Hearing the word noble, Tosen Kaname clenched his fists. Captain Tosen, seeing Tosen Kaname becoming agitated, Fang Mo felt relieved and said with a smile, "You wouldn't want this to happen in the Soul Society, would you?" Tosen Kaname took a deep breath. If something like this happened around me, I would personally judge that criminal. Even if he's a noble. Fang Mo asked cheerfully, "You, a mere commoner, dare to lay a hand on a noble? There's no difference between nobles and commoners in my eyes." Tosen Kaname couldn't help but say, "No matter the status, anyone who commits a wrong should be judged. Fairness is the greatest justice. If you keep this up, I'm afraid I might not be able to hold back and take you to the world of One Piece to become a Marine Admiral," Fang Mo said, unable to refrain from making a sarcastic comment. Akainu, Kizaru, Aokiji, Kurokiji, the 4 Marine Admirals, fighting against the 4 Emperors with the cotton fruit, even red hair would have to give you face. You. Although Tosen Kaname was a weak antagonist, he wasn't stupid. Hearing Fang Mo's words, he frowned slightly. "I see, you're not a Ryoka from this world. Let me reintroduce myself." Fang Mo had no intention of hiding anything and said directly, "I, Fang Mo, am an otherworldly demon lord here just for fun. I am the lord of the square dimension. My world is much larger than your soul society. So, the term Ryoka doesn't really suit me. If I have to say, my relationship with you guys is, diplomacy. Then you should go directly to General Yamamoto instead of hiding here trying to bewitch me," Tosen Kaname said. "Have you ever thought, why am I bewitching you instead of someone else?" Fang Mo countered, "If it's about strength, wouldn't it be better to bewitch Zaraki Kenpachi? Zaraki Kenpachi is just a wild beast raised by the Soul Society, a man who doesn't even know Shikai or Bankai. I would never allow someone like that to be a captain," said Tosen. "This beast will bring disaster to the Soul Society sooner or later. Don't compare me to him." "You." Upon hearing this, Fang Mo couldn't help but facepalm. "Big brother, do you even realize that you almost got killed by Kenpachi in the original story?" "Nonsense, I've never fought him." Tosen snorted coldly. All right. Fang Mo waved his hand, not wanting to argue any further. "Let's not talk about Kenpachi, let's switch to someone else. If I really wanted to deceive someone, then, why wouldn't it be Eisen?" Hearing the name Eisen, Tosen's face changed dramatically. "You." Tosen's demeanor suddenly changed. He unconsciously gripped the hilt of his Zanpakuto, a chilling killing intent slowly emanating from him. "It seems you already know everything." "No, big brother, what's with that murderous look?" Seeing Tosen's change, Fang Mo couldn't help but laugh. "Your Zanpakuto can't even be released right now. How are you going to kill me? If you really want to kill me, you should at least say the release command first, right? But I'd advise you to think carefully before taking any action. If you dare to curse at me, I assure you'll see what true hell is like." Chapter 198, Steve Chapter 197. Seeing the tension growing between the two, Komamura Seijin became increasingly uneasy. "Captain Tosen, what's going on?" Komamura looked at Captain Tosen and couldn't help but ask, "Why do you react this way every time Fang Mo mentions Captain Eisen? Are you hiding something from me? Do you really have no idea, Komamura?" Captain Tosen coldly retorted. "What are you trying to say?" Komamura was genuinely confused. "What are you hiding, Tosen?" "Oh, it's simple," Fang Mo explained. Didn't I mention before that someone stole my belongings and lured disasters into the Soul Society? That person is Eisen. He's researching something called the Hogyaku, aiming to break the boundaries between Shinigami and Hollows, seeking greater power. What? Komamura was taken aback. You're saying Captain Eisen? How could it be him? Indeed, Eisen had not yet shown his true colors, always portraying a gentle and refined demeanor. Komamura could not believe that such a seemingly kind man could be involved in such deeds. But his disbelief was unwarranted given Tosen's strange behavior. As for Tosen, upon realizing that Fang Mo had laid his cards on the table, he no longer kept up the act. His spiritual pressure began to surge. Who are you? Were you sent by Shinji Hirako? Or Kisokura Hara? By gathering your spiritual pressure, aren't you afraid of being discovered by other captains? Fang Mo reminded with a smile. Do you think I should be more afraid of the head captain, or you should? Captain Tosen hesitated, and his accumulating spiritual pressure began to disperse. Captain Tosen, didn't you say you wanted to be a partner of justice? Then why collaborate with Eisen in such deeds? As Tosen's aura faded, Fang Mo continued, isn't the term partner of justice supposed to be positive? Why do those who proclaim it act this way? Forget about the Emiya family, but why even you? Can this world even be saved anymore? I feel cold even in this scorching heat. Lord Eisen understands me, Tosen responded, I loathe the central 46 chambers, those hypocritical nobles. Whether it's the Soul Society or the Siritii, all of this must change. Then go ahead and change it, Fang Mo retorted. Change requires power to support it, Tosen replied, I'm not strong enough to make these changes, so I need to become stronger. Lord Eisen saw this in me. By following him, I can not only become stronger but also realize my ideals. Great, another Oriaminu, Fang Mo sighed, have you heard of the saying, admiration is the furthest thing from understanding? I haven't, Tosen denied without a second thought, it's just nonsense. Admiration is. It's something Eisen said, Fang Mo interrupted. Tosen suddenly went silent. Seeing Tosen become silent, Fang Mo continued to speak, look, Captain Tosen, you follow Eisen because he understands you and can give you power, right? What are you trying to say? Tosen asked. I can also give you power, and I understand you. So why don't you follow me? Fang Mo shrugged and said, and as of now, Eisen might not even be a match for me. He's just a Shinigami now, while I am the Master of Dimensions, on the same level as the Spirit King. Oh, but don't compare the Spirit King to me. I am different from that degraded Soul Reaper, my rank is much higher than his. Do you want me to follow you? Tosen looked at Fang Mo and asked with a frown, what is your purpose? To find joy, to prevent tragedies from happening again, how about that? Fang Mo said with a smile, by just killing the Central 46, do you think you can achieve your revenge? Can you achieve the justice of your old friend by following Eisen? Are you sure? If she were in front of you now, imagine the conversation between you two. Do you think she would want to see you like this? Tosen imagined the scene, then suddenly seemed taken aback. You're following the wrong person, brother. Seeing this, Fang Mo smiled and patted Tosen's shoulder, Eisen just wants to fulfill his own ambitions. He's using you as a pawn. That's impossible. Tosen refuted instinctively. Why did he choose you? Fang Mo shrugged and retorted, if he wanted strong subordinates, why didn't he choose others? You know there are stronger ones in the 13th division, right? He chose you because you're blind, his Zanpakutetsu hypnotic effects don't work on you. But you say you hate Shinigamis, hate the Soul Society. Before Tosen could finish, Fang Mo continued, but Eisen is also a Shinigami. Why don't you hate him? If your friend wasn't killed by her husband but instead accidentally broke Eisen's plot, do you think he would spare her? In your heart, your friend isn't dead. She lives within you. So ask your heart, and ask her, how does she feel about this? What? Fang Mo continued, you hate Shinigamis, want to change things, seek revenge. I appeared. I'm not a Shinigami. Why don't you trust me? It was the Shinigamis who insulted her inner justice, not me. If you joined the organization for revenge, just because of Eisen's words, you forgot your original intent? Joined Eisen in his misdeeds? This is your downfall. I ask you, have you protected what you wanted to so far? Are you truly upholding the justice your friend believed in? Hearing Fang Mo's series of questions, Tosen was a bit stunned, and he instinctively stepped back. Who are you? How do you know all this? Omniscient and omnipotent, understand? Fang Mo replied directly, it's not a unique ability. Someone in your world claims to be omniscient and omnipotent. I'm a dimensional demon, isn't it reasonable that I have this skill? Hearing this, Tosen was clearly shaken. Indeed, his character was inherently indecisive. Otherwise, Eisen wouldn't have been able to deceive him, right? In the original story, Tosen realized his mistakes just before his death. He genuinely woke up, showing his nature was indeed unstable. It's a pity that even though he realized the truth, it was too late. He was killed by Eisen. Quite tragic. But Fang Mo, a modern person, has verbal skills that are no less than Eisen's. He exploited Tosen's most significant weakness, the love of his life, to deceive him. How could Tosen resist? He couldn't. Come on, accept me. Fang Mo said with a smile, I'm not asking you to betray Eisen immediately. You can continue to stay by his side. Be a double agent if you want. I just ask you to keep your judgment. I want you to witness everything with the justice your friend believed in and weigh the right and wrong in your heart. You. Tosen hesitated for a moment and then asked, what do you want me to do? It's embarrassing to say, but I want the Hagyaku. Fang Mo laughed, laughing heartily, of course, I will handle things with Gin Ichimaru too. You can continue to follow Eisen and witness his deeds firsthand. The decadent aristocrats of Siridii are certainly unforgivable, but is Eisen really a good person? Ask your own heart. In fact, you have the answer, you just don't want to admit it, right? Hatred can strengthen your resolve, but it also blinds you. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot that you're blind to begin with. My apologies. Let me put it another way. Hatred blinds your soul. Fang Mo said, I'm not telling you to let go of your hatred. A man of honor should seek revenge if he wishes. Frankly, if it were me, I'd make sure the entire universe knows how terrifying a crazed player can be. However, to be fair, there's more to life than just hatred. While seeking revenge, sometimes think of the beautiful things around you. It's like experiencing it all for your deceased friend. I won't tell you something stupid like believe in me. Fang Mo looked at Tosen and calmly stated a devil-like fact, I will only say. Believe in yourself. Tosen fell silent again. After a long time, he barely spoke, what are you going to do with the Hagyaku? Just collecting a big toy. Fang Mo smiled, I'm not from this world. The human world and soul society have nothing to do with me. I don't need to stay here and rule, or ascend to the heavens. After all, I am the master of dimensions. I just happened to notice this place and descended, taking away things I find interesting. That's it. Don't you want to become stronger? Fang Mo smirked mischievously, and immediately took out a berry, want to try this? What is this? Tosen took the berry and asked. Jinkila. Fang Mo said seriously, or you could say. Power. Tosen pondered for a moment, but eventually couldn't resist putting the berry into his mouth. After chewing for a bit, Tosen's face turned terrible, feeling like he was about to throw up. But the next moment, he swallowed hard, forcing himself to eat it. Immediately, a surge of spiritual pressure erupted from him. What is this? Tosen looked at his hands in surprise, my spiritual pressure has increased. See. Fang Mo patted Tosen on the shoulder, for revenge, you must be very thirsty for power, right? But what has Eisen given you all these years? At most, he used you as a test subject when developing the Hagyaku, and secretly set limits on you, like dying immediately if you can't fight, because there's no room for waste in his world. Do you have more of this Jin something? Tosen didn't care and looked straight at Fang Mo. It's called Jinkila, Fang Mo said. Say Jinkila is mine and I'll give it to you. Jinkila is mine. Tosen hesitated for a moment, but finally couldn't resist speaking out. Chapter 199, Steve Chapter 198. It turns out that once you know someone's psychological weaknesses, it's easy to persuade them. In the world of movies, it's not so bad, but in the world of anime, people are inexplicably easy to sway. Fang Mo briefly summed it up and felt it might be due to the settings. After all, there are too many tragic characters in the anime world. At the drop of a hat, they bring up a miserable past or a traumatic childhood. Their psychological defenses are obviously weaker compared to those in the movie world. Or to put it another way, whether they're heroes or villains in the anime world, they seem to be more easily swayed by extreme emotions. For villains, it's self-explanatory. Take the protagonist Goku from Dragon Ball as an example among heroes. When Krillin dies, Goku instantly becomes enraged, ranting about the power of bonds, which is just him being angry. Other characters are the same. Tosen Kaname is no exception. As an outsider, Fang Mo manipulated him using beliefs he's held his whole life, like revenge, power, and justice. It was really hard for Tosen Kaname to resist, especially since Fang Mo wasn't the only one trying to persuade him. After hearing the whole story, Komamura Seijin couldn't help but try to convince Tosen Kaname too. Now, besides being influenced by what he's obsessed with, Tosen Kaname also felt the most terrifying power of bonds in the anime world. It wasn't exactly a complete surrender, but it was close. He nearly spilled all of Eisen's plans. After listening to everything, Komamura Seijin was stunned. It turns out that the truth behind the incident 100 years ago was like this. It wasn't Shinji Hirako trying to obtain the power of the Hollows, nor was it Yura Harakisuke researching dangerous substances. Behind everything was Eisen. Captain Shinji Hirako and the others were just victims, unknowingly becoming Eisen's experiments and turning into the Vizards. Darn it! After hearing all this, Komamura Seijin was furious, feeling like he could shatter all his teeth. I never expected Captain Eisen to be such a person. I will not allow such an evil person in the Soul Society. With that, he stood up abruptly. Komamura, what are you doing? Tosen Kaname quickly asked. What am I doing? Komamura Seijin replied without hesitation, of course, I'm going to tell the head captain. Or should we just let him go to Hueco Mundo? Komamura, calm down. Tosen Kaname grabbed him, going to the head captain is useless. Eisen is meticulous, and his Kyoka Suijutsu can perfectly manipulate the 5 senses. He can create evidence in his favor at any time. And now we're in league with. Tosen Kaname stopped abruptly, but it was too late. Fang Mo looked at him sharply, were you just about to say we're in league with a curse? I wasn't. Tosen Kaname tried to deny it quickly. If you call me that again, I'll rename your sword to Sunshine, Rainbow, White Pony, Fang Mo threatened menacingly, then, to release its Bankai, you'll have to sing Neige Neige Neige. Sorry, I'll be careful next time, Tosen Kaname apologized. But you have a point, Fang Mo rubbed his chin, Eisen does have Kyoka Suijutsu, and head captain Yamamoto Genryusai is straightforward. It's not easy to deal with Eisen right now. So what do we do? Komamura Seijin asked urgently. He couldn't sit still and wanted to confront Eisen immediately. Of course, in the original story, he did just that, and Eisen took him down with a Kido spell. Just let him go to Hueco Mundo, Fang Mo suggested nonchalantly. What? Both Komamura Seijin and Tosen Kaname were shocked. Why would you do that? If he goes to Hueco Mundo, as Tosen Kaname said, won't the situation worsen for us? Komamura Seijin couldn't believe it. No, on the contrary, Fang Mo smiled, right now, he's a mole. With his Kyoka Suijutsu, we can't expose him, he might even turn it against us. We have to wait for him to reveal himself. Of course, there is one point that Fang Mo did not mention. And that is because of the Hogyaku. This is truly a wonderful thing. Hogyaku claims to be able to break the boundary between Shinigami and Hollows, but its real ability is to sense the imaginations of those around it and materialize them in a reasonable manner. In other words, it's like a mini wish-making machine. If the holder wishes to become stronger, Hogyaku will guide his potential and allow him to evolve continuously. If the holder wants to break the boundary between Shinigami and Hollows, it will do just that. Of course, there are limits to Hogyaku fulfilling wishes. The main premise is that the holder cannot be too weak or silly. For instance, if it were thrown to a hungry crying baby, would the whole world turn into a paradise of only porridge? That's just too absurd. However, Fang Mo believes he definitely won't be that foolish. Not to mention anything else. At least in terms of combat. Fang Mo believes he is definitely no worse than Eisen. Even if members of the Zero Division came, they might not necessarily be his match. After all, everyone has rule-based abilities. If things go south, they could just play tricks on each other, like renaming each other. Pouring a bucket of antimatter on the Zero Division's palace would ensure no resurrection. But jokes aside, if Fang Mo wants the Hogyaku, he really needs to find a way to make Eisen go to Hueco Mundo. After all, according to the original story, Eisen only managed to research half of the Hogyaku, while Kisuk Urahara researched the other half. However, fearing its power, Urahara sealed his half inside Rukia Kukaki. That's why Eisen set up so many schemes, just to get that half of the Hogyaku. Yes, Eisen currently only possesses half of the Hogyaku. The other half inside Rukia is also just half. Although Fang Mo could steal it, what use would it be? Fang Mo has never been technically inclined, so he has no idea how to merge the Hogyaku. He can't just place it on a table and expect it to magically merge. So Fang Mo decided to give it to Eisen first. After all, the Bleach storyline is different from that of Marvel. If Eisen doesn't go to Hueco Mundo, then storylines involving Hueco Mundo, Vizards, and Arancars would disappear, leaving only the final Quincy Blood War arc. Even just to enjoy the drama, Fang Mo needs to find a way to kick Eisen to Hueco Mundo. Of course, Fang Mo would never tell Komamura Seijin about this. Fortunately, Komamura Seijin isn't too sharp. After being persuaded by Tosen Kaname and Fang Mo, he gradually became convinced and temporarily accepted Fang Mo's plan. Seeing this, Fang Mo is also preparing to continue convincing Tosen Kaname. Captain Tosen, I think you rely too much on your Zanpakuto. Fang Mo said seriously, your Bankai is indeed strong to most people, but over-relying on it isn't good. Especially now that you can't use it, I suggest you learn hand-to-hand combat. Train now. Tosen Kaname was stunned, is there still time? Of course. Fang Mo laughed, do you know the weakest link theory? Your spiritual pressure, Shunpo, and Kido are all good. But your physical strength, or physical fitness, is the weak link. It brings down your overall strength. I'll give you an example. Your Suzumashi can deprive 5 senses, but the flaw is that anyone holding the Zanpakuto is immune. So, what if someone withstands your attack and then grabs your Zanpakuto? What? Tosen Kaname was stunned. You see, the weakness is exposed, right? Fang Mo smiled, if you perfect hand-to-hand combat, you can hold the sword with your left hand and attack with the speed of light with your right, perfectly avoiding your weakness. That makes sense. After hearing Fang Mo's words, Tosen Kaname looked thoughtful. He had been blinded by hatred and had been very reliant on his Zanpakuto's abilities. But now, awakened by Fang Mo, Tosen Kaname realized he shouldn't be like that. After all, Zanpakutos have weaknesses. Take Eisen as an example, he's indeed very powerful, but he doesn't rely solely on Kyoka Suijutsu's abilities. He's proficient in all aspects, with no weaknesses. Even without his Zanpakuto, he could easily defeat other captains. I see. Tosen Kaname finally understood and said, only by being strong in all areas can one truly be powerful. Exactly, practice hand-to-hand combat. Fang Mo smiled and took out a golden apple, here, eat this golden marshal to boost your energy. Then go back and practice hand-to-hand combat. Once Eisen goes to Hueco Mundo, I'm counting on you and Gin Ichimaru to be double agents. What is this? Tosen Kaname took the golden apple from Fang Mo and asked curiously. He was clear now that anything Fang Mo brought out was usually not ordinary. Seeing Fang Mo's generosity, Tosen Kaname was more convinced that recognizing Fang Mo was the right choice. It's an apple grown with Jin-Kei law, simply called a golden apple. Fang Mo explained with a smile, after you eat it, it should enhance your... Before he could finish, the entire cave began to shake. 2 terrifying spiritual pressures erupted. Tosen Kaname and Komamura Seijin turned their heads in unison to a distant place. It's captain-level spiritual pressure. Chapter 200, Steve Chapter 199. Different from the captains on the side of the Shinigami. Although Fang Mo is very strong, his perception of spiritual pressure is quite weak. In fact, he himself finds this quite strange. After all, having consumed so many essence berries, both his soul and body are exceptionally strong. So, why can't he understand spiritual pressure? As is well known, the energy system of the Shinigami world consists of spiritual power and spirit particles. This is different from the chakra in the Naruto world. The reason Fang Mo cannot use chakra in the Naruto world is that chakra is refined from the God Tree factor mixed with human cells. Fang Mo neither has God Tree seeds nor cells, so he can't use chakra. But spiritual power in the Shinigami world is different. According to the setting, the Quincy absorb and manipulate external spirit particles for combat, while the Shinigami use their own spiritual power for combat, referring to their souls. Fang Mo thinks he also has a soul. But when it comes to spiritual pressure, Fang Mo is completely baffled. It's said that those with higher spiritual pressure can use more spiritual power. However, now is not the time to consider this. According to Komamura Seijin, among these two spiritual pressures, one is very unfamiliar and doesn't seem like a captain from the Godei 13. If not a captain, it's undoubtedly an enemy. Fang Mo recalled that at this point in time, there should be two significant battles. One is Ichigo Kurosaki against the captain of the 11th Squad, Kenpei Kizaraki, and the other is Urayu Ishida against the captain of the 12th Squad, Mayuri Kuratsuki. Hence, the term protagonists have cheats. Both captains are formidable, but they were surprisingly taken down by the newcomers of the protagonists group. Readers who've seen Bleach argue that Kenpei Kizaraki was holding back a lot. It's one thing to forget about his Shikai and Bankai, but he didn't even use his two-handed sword. Was he clearly faking the fight? Still, Fang Mo plans to check it out. After all, Yuruyuki is with the protagonists group, and he's curious if dried fish can tame her. But before setting off, Fang Mo has one thing to do. He and Tosen Kaname need to put on a show since he will be joining Gin Ichimaru as a double agent. So, a deception is inevitable. So, they discussed it briefly. Fang Mo said he was going to challenge the enemy and meet Ichigo Kurosaki to confuse Eisen's judgment. As for Tosen Kaname, Fang Mo plans to beat him up so that when he returns, it looks genuine. When he returns injured, he can claim he was deceived by Komamura Seijin, encountered the enemy, and was defeated after a fierce battle. His Zanpakuto was sealed, and he was beaten. In short, play the victim and betray some information about Fang Mo to Eisen. As for Komamura Seijin, he doesn't need special arrangements and will just improvise. After setting all this up, Fang Mo did not hesitate to beat up Tosen Kaname. It must be said that Tosen Kaname's character is strange. He actually asked Fang Mo to hit him hard to make it look serious. And then? There's no and then. Fang Mo's punch almost killed him. Even for a captain-level fighter, Fang Mo's punch created a hole through him. In the end, Komamura Seijin couldn't stand it anymore and said, "Just go. I'll call the captain of the 4th Squad, Retsu Anohana, to save him. Otherwise, he'll really die if we delay any longer." Fang Mo didn't stand on ceremony. He teleported away immediately. After leaving the cave, Fang Mo moved in a certain direction. Due to his weak perception of spiritual pressure, the direction was pointed out by Komamura Seijin. After a few teleports, Fang Mo quickly realized where he was. The surrounding buildings gradually decreased, especially the squad barracks. In their place were tall buildings and a white tower-like structure. Seeing this, Fang Mo realized that the battle between Mayuri Kuratsuki, the captain of the 12th Squad, and Urayu Ishida took place on the street. This place is the Remorse Palace where criminals are imprisoned. Clearly, the fight taking place here is between Ichigo Kurosaki and Kenpei Kizaraki. Flying a bit further, even with Fang Mo's slow perception of spiritual pressure, he could now hear the clashing of blades. Soon, Fang Mo saw two people fighting in the alley below. One of them was Ichigo Kurosaki, wielding the giant Zangetsu and constantly blocking attacks. His opponent was a tall man, over 2 meters tall, with an eye patch over his right eye. His black hair looked like a hedgehog's, with many bells tied at the ends. He held a jagged samurai sword and attacked Ichigo like a mad dog. This is Kenpei Kizaraki, officially recognized by the Seireidii as a battle maniac and humanoid beast, the captain of the 11th Squad. Ha ha ha. I'm really curious. Kenpei Kizaraki, while attacking Ichigo, excitedly roared, "You're so strong. Why don't you like to fight?" Speaking of which, he directly kicked Ichigo Kurosaki, sending him flying. Ichigo Kurosaki's body shattered a wall like a cannonball and disappeared into a cloud of dust. "Come on. Continue fighting with me." Kenpei Kizaraki held his samurai sword, showing a somewhat manic grin. "Whether it's death or pain, it's just a small price for fighting." As soon as he finished speaking, Ichigo Kurosaki gritted his teeth and rushed out from the ruins. After all, being the protagonist of a passionate manga, Ichigo Kurosaki was just angry, and his spiritual pressure continued to rise, momentarily pushing back Kenpei Kizaraki. However, Kenpachi Zaraki seemed to enjoy being hit, showing a joyful expression. After retreating several steps, he suddenly laughed out loud. This inexplicable scene left Ichigo Kurosaki stunned. The one being beaten was Kenpachi, so why was he even happier? Was he sick? Quickly, Kenpachi Zaraki began to explain. Do you know how much I crave battle? Sadly, my opponents are too weak and don't let me enjoy the thrill. As Kenpachi Zaraki spoke, he reached for his eye patch, so I had the Technical Development Bureau make this for me. It continuously consumes my spiritual pressure, making me weaker, because only then can those ants give me a bit of pleasure. But now, I can finally enjoy fighting. With that, Kenpachi Zaraki tore off his eye patch, and a surging golden spiritual pressure rose, shaking the spiritual particles around. Just the wave of his spiritual pressure made Ichigo Kurosaki defend with his sword. After releasing all his spiritual pressure, Kenpachi Zaraki's aura became terrifying. With a casual swing, a nearby building was cut in half and began to collapse. Fang Mo, who was watching from the building, couldn't help but curse. Damn! A purple light flashed in his eyes, and Fang Mo teleported to another building. But in that instant, Kenpachi Zaraki looked up as if he sensed something, staring at Fang Mo's location. As for Fang Mo, he only realized after teleporting that a pink-haired little girl, Yachiru Kusajishi, was standing not far away. Hey! The two looked at each other, both a bit stunned. Kusajishi. Fang Mo instantly recognized her. This little girl named Yachiru Kusajishi is the vice captain of the 11th Division and Kenpachi Zaraki's human-shaped accessory and navigator. Hey? You know me? Yachiru Kusajishi looked curiously at Fang Mo, are you a friend of Ichigo? Ichigo. Oh, Ichigo Kurosaki. Fang Mo realized and said, yes, I'm Ichigo Kurosaki's good friend, the strongest invader in Soul Society, the deadly tiger of the Hexagon Warrior Empire. Wow, sounds impressive. Hearing this, Yachiru Kusajishi widened her eyes in surprise. But the next second, she did something that stunned Fang Mo. Yachiru Kusajishi suddenly shouted down to Kenpachi Zaraki, Ken-chan, there's a stronger opponent here. Oh! Kenpachi Zaraki grinned excitedly, today is such a good day, encountering worthy opponents one after another. Then, he turned to look at Ichigo Kurosaki. Honestly, Ichigo Kurosaki was confused. Could such a monster even be defeated? However, before he could think, Kenpachi Zaraki spoke. Kid. Kenpachi Zaraki pointed his sword at Ichigo Kurosaki, we'll continue our fight later, I'm going to deal with that stronger guy first. Hey! Ichigo Kurosaki was dumbfounded. Can you just leave in the middle of a fight? But Kenpachi Zaraki didn't give him a chance to speak. With a flash step, he reached the rooftop and locked onto a speechless Fang Mo. The stronger opponent, is it you? Holding his Zanpakuto, Kenpachi Zaraki began sizing up Fang Mo like prey, you don't seem to have any spiritual pressure. Hey, kid, are you really strong?
Thanks for listening.